Good. Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday, May 14th, 2024 regular board meeting for the Tuolumne Utilities District. And if you'll please follow me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get to public comment, there is one new thing I want to read here before we get to that. And it has to do with our live streaming. Options for public access, audio and video live streaming. The public will not have access for public comments via this media option. They are available for audio and visual only. The public may observe and listen to this meeting on TUD's YouTube channel at Tuolumne Utilities District -YouTube. The district is providing this option as convenience to the public. If the district experiences technical difficulties and the transmission goes down, the meeting will continue in person as scheduled. Okay, we'll go to public forum. We would like to welcome the members of the public who have taken the time to attend this meeting to provide comments on matters related to district business. Any member of the public may address the board relating to any matter within the board's jurisdiction. This section is for comments on items not listed on the agenda. Persons speaking during the public comment will be limited to 5 minutes, or depending on the number of persons wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all members of the public the opportunity to address the board. While no action or discussion may be undertaken by the board on topics presented in this section, board members are listening carefully to these comments and appreciate your input. Is there any public comment?
I'm not sure if this is appropriate. I just wanted a little bit more expansion on what you read before public forum as to where it came from. Was accessed before COVID through video streaming?
I think it has more to do, and Dawn, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it has more to do with the issue we had here a couple of meetings ago where our connectivity went down and we had to disrupt the meeting for some time there until we got it going again. And Melissa, I don't believe there's any rule that says we have to allow that, is there? Yeah. So we're trying to keep the meetings going and avoid interruption. And that was quite an interruption if you remember that not last meeting, but 3 or 4 meetings back. Yeah. So that's where I believe this came from. Is that
a lot of the other agencies like the county are doing the same thing. They have transitioned to this months ago.
Yeah. Barbara?
Real briefly, the public forum paragraph that you read has changed slightly.
It has, yeah.
Interested in where that came from.
Mm-hmm. Melissa, do you have a comment on that?
A lot of the wording or some of the wording that we got was similar to what the county has.
Oh, okay. And did somebody bring that to our attention or who initiated that?
When we added the sections, we kind of looked at some of the other agencies and to see kind of how their agendas were lined up. And Abby and myself worked on it and took some of the wording and updated it.
Yeah,
And
I like it.
Yeah, it's very similar to the county and just other agencies.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you.
Change is good.
Sometimes. Yeah. All right. So one more chance for anybody here in the room would like to address the board. Seeing none, we'll move forward then. Melissa, consent calendar.
Okay, item number 1, minutes of the regular board meeting of April 23rd, 2024, and item number 2, approval of reimbursement claims for director's statement of meetings attended and/or travel expenses and claim summary for April 2024.
Okay, so we've got the 2 items that she read there. Are there any discussion on any of the items? Director Reagan.
Thank you. So claim summary. Page 15 of 20. I don't have any real problem with there's also items on page 6, 13, and 18 that has to do with this. They're all related to the regional wastewater treatment plant. On 15 is Pacific Advanced Civil Engineering Incorporated. Engineering for $21,420. Why are we still engineering a project that's nearly completed?
Good morning. That has shown up on your claim summary for quite some time. And you're correct. The engineering's done. However, the engineer is required to stay on the project throughout construction to respond to RFIs, process change orders. It's not only good practice, but it's also part of the USDA funding requirement. And so there have been approximately 500 RFIs, which means request for information on the project for interpretation of the plans and specs. And so the engineer is responsible to respond formally to all of those. And that's why you see that bill from PACE.
Okay, I would have thought that the engineer in charge would be tasked with that, but
They are the actual engineer of record on the project.
this engineering
Yes.
group. Oh, okay, so it's not Jennifer Batt.
Jennifer's the project manager for the district, but the formal engineer of record, which signs all the plans, signs all the change orders, signs all the requests for information, is Pacific Advanced Civil Engineering.
Okay, thank you for that. And on 6, 13, and 18, found this a little troubling. I'm sure there's a good reason for it, but I need to ask. All three of these things have to do with loan, bond, closing, legal costs. My God, we got $67,000 total on legal costs just to close for the loans and bonds.
That's correct. So as part of the USDA funding agreement, they require bond counsel. And so as part of the transferring the loan from the interim financing COPS to the long-term loan, there is bond counsel that's required by USDA. And so that is the cost associated with that process.
Well, and then once again, they've done an awesome job, Hewitt. But once again, we're cutting a check for $880,000. Please tell me we're close to the end on this.
We're close to the end on this.
How's that for an
Okay.
answer?
It sounded, well, I won't go there. On 16 and 20, Petrie Concrete Pumping Incorporated. We've got two charges there, concrete pumping for $1,400 and then a pump for Phoenix Lake Shotcrete. I thought we owned a Shotcrete pump, and why, what's that all about? There's another $2,400 out the window.
So we sub out when we do shotcrete work, our pump's worn out, old. It doesn't give us the right.
Wait a minute, is that a smile on Barbara's face? Oh, never mind.
It's easier for us to just sub out that pumping.
So it's shot, so now we have to rent?
Yeah, which we have, like, almost all of our shotcrete, we've always gone out. And had
Okay.
somebody pump for us.
Roleri Excavation Incorporated, truck transfer rental, Launchway, Intertie. We've got a lot of equipment out back. I must admit that I don't remember seeing a transfer truck back there, but for $17,640, it's pretty steep. We must really had a need for it.
On the bigger projects to speed things up and to keep crews on the job, we'll sub out to get material, sand, road base, cut back, stationed at different spots. And then that way our guys aren't pulled off to do the trucking.
Oh, I
That way
see.
we can get mainline going, and
Who's driving the truck then?
the subcontractors.
Oh, so this is truck and driver?
Yep.
Okay.
Can I ask one question too regarding that?
Absolutely.
So that 17,000, that includes not only the truck the driver, does it include the road base and the gravel and the cutback and the other items you listed too?
No.
They're billing us through that, or is that? Just curious.
It goes both ways sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes it'll just go right on our tag
Mhm.
because we do have, depends on where the material's coming from. On this particular one, I do not know if,
Okay. So it can be either or.
yes.
Okay, thanks.
I left out one thing from the, my little snivel about, the, regional wastewater treatment plant, and that was on, 16 of 20 was, Robertson Bryan Incorporated, permitting. Why are we permitting still on the regional wastewater treatment plant?
It's a good question. So we were successful. Don, Michelle went down to a regional board meeting just a few weeks ago where they adopted the waste discharge requirements for the new plant. So one would think we're done. Those have been issued to us. So technically we do have the permit for the plant, but there is additional permitting required on the reclamation system. We have a 2002 master reclamation permit that is going to be replaced with a general statewide order. And in order to get that permit, there's still ongoing work from Robertson Bryan. It involves groundwater monitoring and all the land application areas that will now receive tertiary water, whereas they used to receive secondary water.
So this is because we're switching to tertiary, then, basically.
It's true that is a correct statement, but we were going to go through this process regardless because the permit was from 2002. The regional board was going to issue us a new permit either way, even if we didn't upgrade the plant.
Okay, thank you for that. Thanks for the answers to all that. When I bring these things up, it's not because I think there's something that's irregular or somebody's done something that's not right, but I think it's really important for the rest of the board as well as the ratepayers to know where their hard-earned money is going. And some of these things are pretty large, and I think it's good when it's explained how and where it's going and why it has to be spent. The last thing I've got is something that probably should be brought up at the Brent Ives quote unquote workshop. I saw on one of the board directors' stipend sheets that there was a charge for meeting with the GM. In all the years I've been on this board, it's always been, you don't charge for meeting with a GM. That's usually like, I meet with them all the time and I spend maybe several hours even going out in the field and examining projects and so on. I think maybe that, Mr. President, needs to be brought up at the strategic planning and workshop to figure out what the rules are on that, because like I said, all the years I've been on, I've never put down for meeting with a GM. I was always told that that's a no-no. So anyway, that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Okay, so anybody have any other things they want to bring up about the consent calendar with the minutes or the reimbursement for claims? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion to accept.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. There's no further comments. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Melissa.
Okay, regular business, item number 3, consider adopting a resolution authorizing the general manager to submit a financial assistance application to the State Water Resources Control Board for the treated water main extensions to serve ditch domestics project.
Real quickly before Antonio gets.
I need to recuse myself from this?
Oh, sure. You betcha.
I think.
And I need to do the same.
Okay,
One of the properties involved passes through properties owned by family.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just for record, one of the project passes near, my personal property.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Are you ready?
Antonio, just real quick, while the directors are exiting. We want to just be clear, this isn't an action item today. We are asking you guys to authorize the general manager to submit this funding application for ditch domestics. And this was, you may not remember, it seems like a long time ago, but this came to the board in January. And at that time, we had both of the directors recuse themselves, and the board's direction was to take it to committee, the ditch committee, which we've done. And now we're back again with the same request, same action item. And so Antonio's happy to go through as much detail as needed. And then Director Balin, chaired the ditch committee, so she can also fill the board in on what was discussed in the committee meeting.
Okay, Antonio Ramirez, Engineering Department, Customer Service. So the district provides ditch domestic service to approximately 130 residents in accordance with a compliance agreement that was adopted in 2002 with the state of California. Ditch domestics have no other source of potable water to their property. They rely solely on the ditch water for indoor uses. The compliance agreement grandfathered ditch domestic service to pre-existing customers under several stipulations, some of which, the first of which is no new ditch connections would be permitted. Another is each customer must provide TUD evidence that they are buying bottled water on a quarterly basis. And then also that as treated water becomes available and is economically feasible for the property owner to connect, the connection shall be required upon change in ownership. From time to time, we look at these projects and see if there are new projects that can be undertaken. And so we ended up identifying 11 project areas, which contain approximately 23 ditch domestic customers, which we feel could be reasonably served through extension of either a treated water main or an individual service lateral. An individual service lateral is the 1-inch line off an existing main. So meaning those properties already have a main in front. The State Water Resources Control Board, we reached out, Cindy reached out to the board and presented them with a preliminary concept for our project and to try and figure out what the terms for the grant would be. And they indicated that they would cover 100% of the cost, everything from the public infrastructure to the private. And we'll talk a little bit more about that going forward, but that's generally what we're hoping to achieve here, is to get a grant that would cover all of these projects, all aspects of the construction. I'll discuss a little bit more about the ditch domestics and the unique health concerns. There's very little control over how water is used in the home for ditch domestic. This means that you could have a home with elderly or children in there who could potentially be drinking the water. There certainly are bathing in it, doing their laundry with it. But the state, obviously has concerns about that. And so that's why they offer grant funding for projects like this. That's why we're also concerned about it. So that's, a lot of people don't really realize this still is happening across the state. Ditch domestics are required to purchase a minimum of 5 gallons of bottled water each month for consumption in the home. The Center of Disease Control recommends that each person have a minimum of 30 gallons of bottled water per month for drinking, bathing, and cooking and washing dishes. So again, just highlights the need, for the property owner, and just the need for this project in general. If the grant is approved and we do pursue the project, the ditch domestic customers will have the option to retain their ditch service for irrigation purposes, outdoor purposes only. If they do keep the ditch service, they'll have to install a backflow device. We will definitely work to verify that if the project does occur, that the private plumbing and thus the ditch water is separated from the treated water. Yeah, and then I'm gonna go back over to the fiscal impact. The action of submitting a grant application has no direct fiscal impact to the district. The amount of grant funding is, we obviously haven't received, we have been told that it'll be 100% covered and, meaning again, the public water main, the private pipeline, backflow devices, and the connection to the home. We don't know exactly what we'll get, but that's the hope and that's the intention here, that the district would not be using district funds to for any part of this project. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, the previous related action, this did go to committee. They seem generally supportive of it. With that, I'll take any questions.
Questions for Antonio? I've got one. So, okay, so 100% coverage on this, this grant covers everything, which like I said. Are there any hooks or strings attached that we need to be aware of, like sometimes there is with stuff coming from the state, or probably not on this, but I'm just asking.
I think that would probably come when they approve it and they let us know what the conditions are. I don't know how often they change course once they let you know what a grant is gonna, I don't know how much this can change, to be honest. So I don't know if Eric can let us know.
I think I want to clarify something. Antonio mentioned that our intention is to have this thing 100% paid for via grant. I think Antonio said we're not sure what we'll get. So just understand.
So it's a little premature to ask that question.
I think. Am I correct?
Okay.
Yes.
I'll ask it again then when. Director Ringen.
So just to make it clear, this was discussed in detail in the ditch committee and recommended to go before the board for final decision or discussion and decision. I just want to reiterate that my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this is a golden opportunity for TUD to have something paid for by a grant that sooner or later TUD is going to have to do one way or the other. Is that not correct?
That is my opinion.
Director Balin?
Y'all done?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I appreciate this going back to committee, and after we went over each project in committee, a few of them were tossed out, I believe. The maps, it kind of narrowed down a little bit. A couple of them, you guys went, not ready to go through. How did that turn out?
I think there definitely were some differences in the maps, but I don't recall that we kicked any out.
I believe we included a map for Cielo Vista that we in committee did discuss. That's probably not feasible. So I don't think we'll be moving forward with that, but I think I'd have to look in here if it's included, but that one has been removed. Yes, that one was just too long. It was a private lateral that would have been running through adjoining properties, a very long distance. So yes, the answer to your question is that one's been removed, but the 11 sites that are in your agenda package, we plan to move forward with.
Okay. So thank you, Eric. I found it of value to discuss these items with respect to potential growth inducing and incremental growth creep in that area, making sure that everybody's paying their fair share. I'm really pleased to see 100% is paid by grant, but the growth inducing potential was one thing I was having some concern for. And then I just wanted to slightly change the recommendation, correct me if I'm wrong, Ron, but of course, we recommended that it go back to the board, but for consideration, but we recommended that we move forward on it. And I wanted, that's kind of not reflected here. We're not just, it's just not a ping pong ball here. We're not just going to go back and forth. We recommended after reviewing each one in depth in committee that we could maybe save a little time by saying, yeah, let's recommend moving forward on this grant. So I just sort of like to make that little shift here for the record. That's all I have to say.
Okay, any other comment? I don't have any other. Okay, let's open it up to the public. Any comment from anybody here in the audience? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board.
I'd like to make a motion for adopting the financial assistance application to the State Water Resources Control Board for the treated water main extensions to the service ditch domestics project.
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved and second to approve the resolution. Any further comment? Any further comment from the public? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 3-0 with 2 recusals.
Thank you.
President Kearns, can I
Yes.
make a comment?
Mhm.
Thank you, Antonio. Dawn, okay.
Dr. Balin, go ahead.
Not what I wanted. Okay. Yeah, I have a question just regarding why we're not voting on the approval of this. What we vote on is that you submit an application. So are we, is this, it's just, I've just noticed this little shift in what the board doesn't really approve. We just, I guess, approval is assumed in you authorizing. But there's really no clear language here that says that we approve the grant. And I just can't help but think that this is just slightly muddy to me.
Well, there's not a grant yet. We have to apply for it.
Well, that's a really good point. So, and that's a compelling point. So. So I'll just turn my microphone off. Okay, but
Because
no, and I needed to hear that. I needed to
Well,
hear-
if, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're successful in getting approved for this grant, then you come back and we accept the grant at that point in time, correct? That's what we've done in the past. So then
There's 2 flavors. The standard template for the State Water Board is to authorize the general manager to submit the funding application and to also authorize him or her to execute the funding agreement. But in this case, we've been explicit with the board throughout this process and including in committee that if this comes back in the form of a grant, it will come back to the board. So there are 2 different paths. Sometimes things are not really discussed in great length at the board level, and we feel that getting authorization to submit is implied that you're in support of the project. But this project has a number of nuances that I know are of particular concern to board members. So we will bring it back if we're successful. And unfortunately, it'll probably be a year and a half before that happens. So we'll have to review the project in its form, the way it's funded. We aren't going to expand the project beyond the 11 sites. So you've created a kind of a limit to the scope of the project. If anything, it might get smaller, but we will bring it back to the board if we are successful in getting funding.
Yeah, I think that's where the confusion is, because we are looking at a project. It's got a beginning and an end. And I just want to make that clear for the record that our decision to authorize our general manager is based on us looking and approving of what you have in mind for the money that we steward, the ratepayers' money. So it just, it's worth a discussion. And then again, that's the pinch point for the board, because a year and a half later, you could have a new board and nobody's going to remember that we conceptually approved or something. And it just seems as time goes by for a board or a change of board, it's not clear. And so the clarity I find is in the paper trail. You're the constant in this and you're an paid employee, but we are not. And a paper trail is perhaps a little more clear than that. Sometimes you need to see, oh, previous board approved this group of projects. And so that's where I'm making the point. The clearer we can make this for the future, the better. Because you're right, it could be a year and a half, new people. So, okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Director Ringen?
Yeah, I'd just like to tag on there to what Director Balin was saying. You said that when it comes back, it'll be for the projects that are there and maybe smaller. How about larger? Could it be enlarged? Because we have we have a fair amount of ditch domestics, and this is a golden opportunity.
We did an internal filtering of the feasibility of projects based on our knowledge of the area and of costs of construction. And we recognize there's 130-ish ditch domestics in the system, but we only identified 23 that realistically within the framework of the funding agreement we could extend potable water to.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we're just stuck with over 100 still that are so remote where a water main extension would be so long and expensive for such few connections. I'm sure the state would not be receptive.
Okay, thank you.
So it's a qualification issue.
It's a cost feasibility analysis that we did to get down to these 23.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eric. Sure. Any other comments? Okay, Melissa.
Okay, item number 4, consider execution of agreement for consultant services with Marsh Wagner for owner advisor services related to the Sierra Pines Regional Water Treatment Facility project.
Okay, before we get started on that, Director Ringen had a couple comments he wanted to bring up about this item.
Thank you very much. I actually have a couple of questions. And they're directed initially at our general manager and maybe district engineer. And then I'll have a comment. How would you not say that Sierra Pines project is as important, as big a deal to Tuolumne Utilities District ratepayers, water ratepayers, as the regional wastewater treatment plant project was to the sewer customers?
So not just give you a one-word answer, you're correct. You know, I'll expand a little bit on it, and I don't want to compete. I don't want to put some sort of strange competition.
No, I just meant that it's really, really
It
important.
is. It truly is the greatest thing we can do for our current ratepayers, our future ratepayers, and for the county, as far as I'm concerned. This is on water. This is the one-time opportunity we have to fix a wrong that was made decades ago. It's an opportunity to capitalize on economy of scale and lower ongoing operation maintenance of a system, a water system. Yes, it's very important.
And so I would say that it would be safe to say that it is imperative that we don't have anything go haywire on this project, that we need to make sure that this project moves through from beginning to end and stays from everything that I've learned throughout the years, that this thing has slowly evolved to the point where it's looking really good, like we're going to be able to move forward, that finances are tight. We're just going to squeak in on this thing. And so we can't have any failures or anything like that, correct?
That's correct, but that statement can be said about every darn thing we do at this.
Well, I know,
We're a poor disadvantaged district. We do not have all the money in the world. We have to make darn sure that our money is well spent, you know, put together with a lot of professional people, everybody, all hands on deck. We have technical experts in the house. Trevor's been here with us for as long as I have on the water side. So he's got a lot of technical knowledge. We have consultants, we have engineers, we have decades between all of us. We've got to have over 130 years of experience. So yes, not to overemphasize, but make a mistake here. No.
so my final observation or question or whatever is, this is the first time that TUD has embarked on this manner of build construction, correct?
Correct.
So this is new territory. There's going to be some kind of feeling it out as we go, which doesn't make me feel real comfortable. So I guess my final comment, that what I was getting around to, is to my fellow board members, this decision that we're going to come up with today is probably one of the most important ones we're going to make. Yeah, at least in a long time. So I'll leave it at that. But we really need to get this right. And I hope staff and all have got it right too, because we can't make a mistake. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Reagan. Okay. Who's up?
All right, well, before Gadiel comes before the board to formally present the item, I want to make a couple brief comments, and they're relevant to Director Balin's comments on the previous item and your comments right now, Director Reagan. Consistency and persistence is really critical to get projects like this done. This project's been in the works for over 10 years and in earnest the last 5 years. And it's a big milestone today. It's extremely important who we select to help us guide through the design build process. But I want to express some appreciation to this board and previous boards for their commitment to this project, because going back to 2019, there were decisions made to invest money in an unknown, quite frankly, to fund preliminary design, to fund wetland delineations, to fund the CEQA and the permitting. The board adopted the CEQA. The board's made a series of steps, all that were very critical to get us to the point we are today. And Sierra Pines is an extremely important project, but the finances have to be done right. I want to remind the board, we received a letter in October last year that was a non-binding funding commitment. So it's not a commitment if it's non-binding, right? But the state water board committed $45.6 million towards the project. And the owner's agent that we're considering hiring for the project, who's on Zoom today, their expenses would be reimbursable. So there are some initial costs the district will need to pay that will be reimbursed once we get the funding agreement signed. I want to be clear about that. But this owner's agent is tasked, and Gadiel will explain more, with really helping us manage what are the iterative cost estimates that the design build team will provide that will be the basis by which we negotiate and the board executes a contract for the design builder to actually build Sierra Pines. This is the first real tangible step in that process. So it is very important. But I want to express appreciation to the board for years and years of commitment and support towards getting us to where we are today. And it's an exciting time. So turn it over to Gadiel.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Yeah, as you guys know, I'm Gadiel, an associate engineer here with the district. And I just want to say I'm very excited to be part of this, this huge embarkment we're going into here. The Sierra Pines is just the keystone of our water system, and it's exciting times. things are actually moving on it, you know, the state's close to funding it. And we're stepping towards with this hiring, actually selecting somebody to design and build it. So I'm very excited and blessed to be a part of it here with all of you. So, yeah, the decision before you today is staff is recommending that we hire a consultant outfit named Marsh Wagner and Associates. In previous discussions with the board, we've talked about this new construction delivery method, and we're calling it progressive design build. And we've mentioned that this is our first time. We are by no means experts in it, and so as a good project manager and people have my mentors in project management have taught me before that, okay, you don't have to be an expert in everything, but if you don't know what you're doing, you got to hire an expert to help you. So, you know, we know a lot about project management, and we know a lot about, like Don was saying, we have a lot of experience amongst us with kind of conventional things, but we need expert help in this specific type of project delivery. So, not to mention the fact that we're playing with big money here, we're playing with a big project here, and we need to get it right. Like Mr. Ringen was alluding to earlier. It was our goal here to hire a consultant that we believed was going to pay for themselves in the end. All right. That's really important. And when we hire an expert to help us understand what a contractor and what a design build team is telling us, filtering it out for us, getting through anything that may be in favor of the contractor more than it's favorable for us. We need protection against that as well. Not saying that that's going to be necessary, but if it is necessary, we need to have that protection there. So we put together a request for proposals from consultants. We actually got the word out. I went to a conference in Seattle and was handing out flyers for our project to get to increase interest. And I met a lot of people up there in Seattle. One of those people that I met was Heather Marsh and Fred Wagner up there. The scope of the RFP is a little bit complicated, so I wanted to go through that with you guys. So the scope of the proposal includes hiring a design build team. It's kind of a long process, and we need a lot of legal documents in place, and we need a very clear defined scope for that team so that we can hire the design build team. Okay, that's the first step of the scope. The second step of the scope is support through the design process and even into the construction, at least the beginning of the construction process. Okay, and that's going to take another several years to get through. All right, so that's the scope of work includes all of that. The cost that we're looking at today only includes that phase where we're hiring the design build team. Okay. After we hire a design build team, we're going to go back to Marsh Wagner and we're going to negotiate a new price for the support for the second part of that scope. Okay. The reason why we did it that way is because it's hard for a consultant like Marsh Wagner to give us a price on the design portion before we really define what we want during that design. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So we have a price on what it's going to take to get a contractor and a designer on board. Okay, but when we go through this iteration of defining what we want and defining what we want that to look like, that's going to give Marsh Wagner and our consultant a lot better a picture what kind of support we're going to need during that second phase. So there's no point in getting a price on that second phase before they know how to give us a price on that second phase. So I hope I'm making myself clear there, and feel free to shoot any questions about that on me. Yeah, Director Ringen.
So I read through this thing twice, believe that or not, and was cross-eyed both times when I got done.
Me too, but
that is, you just hit on the first thing that I was concerned about. So we make an investment, and they're not in business not to make money, so I get that. They can't be doing things for free, and so, but we go through the first, let's say we hire them, and so they get paid for the first portion of this figure it out, let's call it the figure it out phase. Then you go to the second phase. Well, we're already invested in this. Suppose things don't work out at that point, we're out. and we haven't accomplished anything. So, and then if I read this right, there's a third point, and I think that's hiring the actual contractor. So there's another spot where we could be invested all the way through to the point where now we have to decide to spend some more money in order to actually get the contractor that is where we wanted to get to in the beginning. I don't feel real good about that. I understand it. I mean, having been in construction for 60 years, I get this, but I've never seen it done like this. I've never, so I'm a little queasy over that.
Yeah, I completely understand the hesitance here and the unsurety there, right? And the fact that if things aren't working out, what do we do at that point, right? So, and this is a new process, and this way we're doing it, we did a lot of research, we did a lot of homework on this, and this is a kind of a conventional way of doing it. There is a little bit more unsurety than a conventional consultant, because normally at this point, we'd just be hiring a designer to just design for us. And that just feels a little bit more comfortable, kind of a little bit more defined what they're doing, right? So just to make myself clear here, so you were saying there's the figure it out phase. All right, so what we call that is the procurement phase. They're gonna help us procure, I can't say that word right now. They're gonna help us procure a design builder, designer and contractor. Okay. So there's not a third phase where both of them at the same time.
Okay.
That's the magic of design build here. We hire a designer and a contractor at the same time, form that whole team among us. We're all gonna design and build together. Design build is what it's called, right?
So that's a procurement point.
The procurement phase ends with hiring that design builder.
Okay.
Okay. I think the third phase that you are alluding to here is we launch into the design phase, right? The whole project gets designed, and then at some point construction starts. All right. Of course, the contractor that we already have hired is going to be the contractor building, right? Assuming everything goes smoothly and you all feel comfortable enough to execute that next phase. Marsh Wagner is going to be with us potentially through all three of those phases, right? We're hiring for, and the cost that we have before us is for the procurement phase, right? The next phase, we're going to get a new cost from Marsh Wagner to help us on the design phase. And then going into construction, we may or may not bring Marsh Wagner with us through the construction phase. There's other options that we can explore there for the construction phase, such as just hiring a construction manager or hiring an inspector, depending on how comfortable we feel with the contractor that we've already been working with for quite a number of years, and depending on how our own staffing can handle what we can handle at that point. Does that make things a little bit more clear, Director Rainey?
Yeah, but you're talking about a contractor that you've worked with for years. And I thought that the organization we're thinking about hiring is going to be the one searching out this contractor.
Oh, what I meant was after the procurement phase, we'll hire the design build team. We'll work with that design build team for at least a year just in design. Like that's what our timeline shows. So that contractor and designer team, along with our consultant, Marsh Wagner, will all be working on this project through the design phase for some number of time. That time we'll become familiar with the contractor. We'll become familiar with the way they're working. We'll learn to trust them. We'll learn to not trust them. We'll learn whatever we're going to learn about them. Then by the time we execute that phase to construct, which will be a new price that will come before your board, we'll already be familiar with that team. So depending on our comfort level with that team, we can decide how much more support we need during construction.
So you're talking about the construction company also at the same time?
That's right, because the designer and the construction company are going to be a team together that we work with throughout the design phase. So we're talking with the contractor, getting prices, getting vendors lined up, things like that, all during this design phase. And then the next phase, that same contractor will execute the construction of the facility. Is that
Okay.
making sense?
Well, yeah, no, it makes sense. I just, getting the proper contractor is going to be the link, the actual link pin on this whole thing. Because, they have to know, be aware of the issues that we have up here. And this is not like a normal project. Some people may think it is, but it's far from it.
It is.
And there's a lot of aspects to it that need to be thought of during construction to be taken care of, even for additional projects down the road that are related to this treatment plant. So, and then there's a geography. And who knows what we're gonna run into as far as granite goes. That area is granite also. So I have a lot of concerns if it's not a contractor that's worked here in the area for a long time and knows all these sort of things.
Yeah, you are absolutely right that getting the right contractor, getting the right design contractor team on board of this project is absolutely essential to the success of this project. That's why we're calling on the help of some design build experts to help us procure the right team.
We also have an issue of very sensitive neighbors to that property. And that's going to be interesting on how we handle that.
Interesting is a good word. Yeah, Barbara.
Yeah.
Director Bailey.
Thanks, Ron. The way I understand what you're saying is, and when I used to bid for archaeological surveys for projects here, and I think this is where another way people can understand this, is that I would give two bids. One was for the ground, I could cover 90 acres a day. So for the that could be archaeological survey, but I wasn't going to bid on recording all the cultural resources I would find within that until I saw the inventory and what I found. And then I would okay, survey fixed. Now here's what I found. I could be there for years if there was a lot of cultural resource work to do and consultation, et cetera. So I never gave a bid until I knew what I was in for that second. So that may be a little bit helpful to folks on why maybe when you bid pretty fixed what you can do. And then once you really get into it, like geography, like a lot of other things, then you see what you're in for. So I can appreciate the two stages there. My one comment was that it was this request, the scope of work didn't really say some of those things, like here's what you're in for, neighborhood sensitivity. And we pride ourselves on good neighbor. I mean, you pride yourself on efficiency, and you put, I think, work over people, something like that in here, and which I thought was interesting. And I just wonder, do you just wait for somebody, this piques their interest, and then they call you and then you tell them what they're in for? I just think that it would have been a little more helpful if I was going to bid on giving the social atmosphere here and the position of the project, and and perhaps they call and find those things out. But I would have thought that a little more of the background would have been in it. I'm not being critical. It's just that if I was a bidder, I like, wow, is this gonna, we really want to be here. We want to be part of this team. This really sounds exciting, or like, so any rate, that's just my personal observation.
I understand. Yeah, we weren't very explicit about that in our request for proposals, is what you're saying?
Yes.
So I understand. I don't disagree. So we did include links to the CEQA document, which is that's a bear of a document. So and that a little bit of that's a lot of that's in the CEQA document, as you know. And then the other thing about each of the proposers is that we did meet with each of them and several times with both Zoom calls, in person where they're at, in person where we're at, all of them toured the site. And so they got a lot of that background information that may have been missing from the RFP just in our conversations.
Great, thanks.
So if there's no more questions right now, I'll go through a few more things I wanted to mention about the qualifications-based RFP process. That's what we used. Scope, we put together a multidisciplinary selection committee, which is a great buzzword that I love to use because it sounds really cool. But it was operations was part of it. The water treatment operators were part of it. Because this is just a selection committee for the consultant, right? So, but we wanted to form this team now, early on in the project. So this is the team that was selecting this consultant is going to be the team that's working with this consultant, not just engineering, because engineering has their priorities. Administration also is involved. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. All of us ranked each proposal that came in after several ranking rounds, and Marsh Wagner was the #1 ranked consultant. The selection process didn't end there, because at that point is when we opened the sealed cost proposal, only for the #1 ranked firm. Okay? The other ones we send back to the consultants. We don't even open them. But so you might be wondering, well, how do we institute a little bit of cost control on this contract, right? The way we do that is in the state regulations allow this on a qualifications-based process. We enter negotiations, okay? And we were able to successfully negotiate with Marsh Wagner on a price that we both agreed on that was actually lower than the price that was included in their sealed proposal. So I wanted to mention that as well. With that, we're recommending that Marsh Wagner, both Heather Marsh and Fred Wagner, are on Zoom with us, and I'll let you guys briefly introduce yourselves.
Great. Thanks, Gadiel. And you can hear me just fine?
We can hear you.
Great, great. Well, I'm Heather Marsh. I'm the president of Marsh Wagner. I am a geologist and an engineer, so I'll have a special spot in there looking for that granite that you mentioned earlier. We are a woman-owned and operated business that I started in 2013 after leaving a global engineering firm as a national practice leader. We are a small firm of about 10 people. We do have a broad base, I guess you could say. We have 3 main staffed offices: Columbus, Ohio, Jacksonville, Florida, and San Francisco, California. Fred joined me in 2017 as vice president in charge of our owner advisor services. He has over 30 years experience as a water wastewater contractor, and he has been an owner advisor, sharing his knowledge ever since. So Fred, I'll let you take it away with all the nitty gritty.
First, I wanted to thank the board for giving us this opportunity to speak with you today, and the folks at TUD for selecting us. Director Ringen, the comments you made a few minutes ago about the importance of this project, I just wanted to stress that that's why we're here. We met Gadiel and another one of your associates in Seattle at a DBI conference, and we were interested in this job just from having a conversation with them because of the importance of this project to the community for the long term. This is a 50-year life cycle type opportunity, and the challenges you guys face, I mean, this is what we live for. So we're very excited about that. Director Balin, your comments, I wanted to address them really quickly as well. Everything that you guys brought up as concerns are all legitimate, and to us in a collaborative delivery process, they're all risks. So a lot of what we're doing is we're helping you manage risk to get to a successful completion. If we execute the first phase of this project right, which is the procurement phase, we will have designed or developed a contract scope that's going to have the contractor, the design build entity, he's responsible for the design and the construction. He's going to do all the heavy lifting for us. So if we do our job right, we're working ourselves out of a project over time. And the idea is to select the individual team members. You select a firm with experience, but then you look for the team members that know how to execute a transparent, collaborative process correctly. There's a lot of trade-offs here in terms of the benefits of collaborative delivery. And I've been doing collaborative delivery projects in the water market since about 2007, about 15 years as a contractor, and the rest of it as an advisor. I love this process, and I love the collaboration, and I love the group think and the way you get a group of people in a room and you come up with really good solutions. And when it's working correctly, there's nothing better. But you're also, in exchange for all this transparency and collaboration, you're also you're taking this work out of a competitive procurement environment, and you're not getting a low bid right out of the gate and knowing what your cost is going to be. So it's a very complex transaction, and we have to manage it very carefully if we want to keep the cost in line with expectations. And that's been a big challenge in the industry. You hire a contractor, and so we're really here to do three things for you. We're here to help guide you through this process, and ultimately we want you to be able to make informed decisions at every step of the way. If you always know the consequences, and in this case, cost consequences of every decision you make, you can control the cost. And so that's what we want to facilitate in terms of how we develop this contract and what the contract requirements are. We have a contractor that's not constrained by competitive market conditions, so we have to pay a little bit of attention to him and sort of hold him in check, and again, make sure that everybody's being fair here. I mean, the idea is it's fair for everybody. So that's a very important role that we play, and our experience helps us do that. And finally, we need to be able to build this thing to budget. Build the budget is the term you guys had in your RFP. It really starts with design to budget. So we've got to select the right team that's going to come in here and have the ability to design this thing to budget, and we got to keep them on budget every step of the way. I think Eric mentioned briefly, there's a lot of transactions along the way here. We're gonna spend about a year and a half in design, and all through that process, we're going to stop and we're going to verify budget and scope and risk at each step of the way, and make sure we're on track. And that's the process that second phase of pre-construction, once we select the design builder. Our proposal outlined a comprehensive plan on how we're going to do the procurement phase, how we're going to execute the pre-construction phase, and a little bit on what's going to happen on the construction end of this thing. But the ultimate goal here is to select the right design builder by December of this year, and then orchestrate a pre-construction process that gets us to a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price for the work, that is at or below $45.6 million. And that's going to be about a year-long process. What we're relying on are contractor deliverables, so that the contractor, the design build entity, is going to be producing design documents. So we need him to develop a design that stays within budget. And he's going to be producing periodic updates of the cost estimate and a schedule and a risk register that assesses all the project risks. So we're going to be continually reviewing those deliverables on a very granular level and making sure we understand them, and making sure you guys understand them, and most importantly, understand the cause of every single change in cost. We can't have a cost of the work go up $300,000 and not understand why, because then we can't do anything to rein it back in. So it takes a lot of concentration, a lot of attention. Again, if we do our job right in the first phase, and we select a design builder who is going to be transparent, genuinely transparent, and is going to buy into what we're all trying to do here, our lift during the second phase is a lot lighter, because we don't have to dig so deep into his deliverables. If we develop a level of trust, and we know that the transparency is genuine, then we sit back and we can kind of monitor this thing. And Gadiel mentioned, we really don't know what we're going to get until we select, but we can kind of sit back and monitor this and advise you guys, and give you guys input on trade-offs and constructability, and kind of consequences of different options that you guys always have to take throughout this process. If the contractor is not being transparent and he's just burying us in details, and it's not giving us the information we need, then we're prepared to dig in and extract the information for you and make sure that we understand things. But the idea here is to orchestrate this process from day one to the end, and stay in control. It's easy to hire a design builder and hand it all to him and sit back and let him do his thing, but you're not necessarily going to get what you want unless you're able to manage that process, and that's what we're here to do.
Yeah, that's not how TUD operates.
Heather mentioned we've been owner advisors for about 4 years now. Over the last 4 years, we have We've been involved in 20 different projects. We've in negotiation of 29 different guaranteed maximum price proposals with a total value of about $1 billion, just over $1 billion. So we've had a lot of practice at this, and we've seen a lot of things that go wrong, and we've made a lot of steps to correct things and achieve better outcomes. Yes.
You can't tell. Somebody else trying to speak.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Gadiel, go ahead.
Thank you, Fred. Yeah, like Fred mentioned, TUD doesn't operate by handing off their project to a designer and call us when it's done. We want to be very involved.
Director Balin, do you have a question?
Yeah. So in my experience, one of the purposes of an interdisciplinary team is to have a well-rounded group of people that can, in the design phase, work out potential fatal flaw type things, reduce costs, and mitigate those concerns in the design. So when we have an area like the Trainhard area, those people are very concerned about this project, the construction, et cetera. But also there's a high value for recreational component. There's a high value for environmental component. So when I look at my definition of interdisciplinary team would have those concerns represented on the team that can highlight red flags so they can get mitigated in the design phase. And I don't see this in this team here. So my question to you, Fred and Heather, is do you have any sort of environmental compliance specialists that can look at those potential problems and mitigate those as a team in the design phase?
We have excuse me, I'm trying to manage my sound here. We have a water design expert, a water design specialist who has, he's a licensed PE in California. He's also a water operator. And he has designed and constructed a number of plants in California, including a plant that was built in Redlands a while back that is based on the exact Corollo PDR that you guys have for this project. So we have a technical consultant who's available to support TUD as needed. He's not there to direct, but he's there to provide the benefit of his experience on this specific type of technology. In several meetings we've had with TUD staff, he's been very vocal about things that he would like to change and things that he thinks will help make this a better project. Some of the other issues that you mentioned in terms of community outreach, we have addressed those in our proposal, and we have advocated very strongly for early and continuous community engagement to make sure that the community understands the scope of the project and that they have a say in things that we would need to address both in the design and the execution, the construction. The first thing we noticed when we went up to, we've made 3 trips up to Twain Harte now before our final interview. The first thing we noticed is all the road paving up there is in really rough shape, and you run a couple of hundred tandem axle dump trucks up and down the hill hauling material in and out of there, and we're going to have an issue with the community. You also have a lot of residents right up around the plant itself that have access right of ways that go right across the plant. So there are a lot of really, really important community issues that we need to address. But again, our job is to try and facilitate that engagement and help Gadiel to make sure that the community has a voice.
If I may, Director Balin,
I can give you some very specific project examples if I need to.
If I may, Director Balin, so I think that your concern was that in their team, the proposal that they lay out their team members, and there's nobody specifically looking at community outreach or environmental expert on their team. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the environmental work that was done identified some cultural features, the historic landscape, and its history and wetlands and the listed species, et cetera, which is all really connected throughout the whole system. So just looking at those things that were identified, making sure that those come through the project relatively unscathed.
Okay, so where I think Marsh Wagner can help us with that specifically is to make sure that the design build team that we hire has an expert on board that can help us with those. Okay, so it's not necessarily in the scope that we asked for from the design to address the issues specifically. It is in the scope that we asked for to make sure that all of these issues that are important to the project are addressed throughout the entire project. So hopefully that addresses your concern.
That's, I think, what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that this really critical piece that was identified in the CEQA NEPA, not just, okay, we check that box and now let's just go forward. I really want to make sure that those concerns, the recreational concerns, that we develop a relationship of goodwill through this project, and that the community then has stakeholder buy-in. I know those are real, cliche words, but that they hire someone that cares, like an environmental compliance specialist, that can make sure that we're in compliance with what CEQA identified.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that there will be a team member.
Yeah,
board.
well,
Thank you.
we're gonna go through the procurement process and make sure that all of those issues get addressed when the time comes to actually design and execute. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Gadio.
Oh, Darren,
Oh,
you
sorry.
had something?
Sorry.
Okay.
Didn't see it.
I just want to tag on with what Director Balin was saying. Those of us that have lived here for a long time know that is, and I'm sure that the consultants, when they visited that property, saw that it's a beautiful, rare piece of property. It's a rare find. And it's well known. Twain Hart's real proud of it. And I know I played golf on it several times back in the day when it was actually a golf course. And so I guess where I'm going with what Director Balin was saying is that whatever's built has to be built into that site in a way that doesn't adversely affect it. And I like the fact that Fred brought up about the condition of the roads, because Twain Hart has some notoriously poor shape paved roads, and that is going to be an issue, and we're going to get lots of complaints if there's
Always lots of complaints.
torn up roads, lighting that is onto the neighboring properties. It's not wanted. Noise, how we're going to handle getting in and out of the property, as well as operating the property during snow conditions. There's a lot of little tidbit things that need to go into this, and it's going to take a little bit of thinking in order to be able to come up with the proper decisions on that.
Yeah, and I think that these values really need to be from the birth of the project, right? Like a root of the project. And I think that that's where Marsh Wagner can help us a lot, to make sure that just the request for the qualifications, the very first thing that the design builder sees is like, yeah, there are all of these things that are very important to this project. And I think that's where Marsh Wagner can help us put together those procurement documents in a way that expresses that to the design build community.
Great. Yeah. The only thing I would ask is that during construction is you find all those golf balls I lost that you can back to me.
We'll deliver them to you.
President Kurtz, I got a couple.
Sure, Director Boatright.
Gadiel, if you can go back to page 1 of the summary, and I'd like to go through and reconcile these costs that we're looking at.
Yep,
For the proposal right now, we're looking at 185,208. That is for Marsh Wagner to help with oversight, just to choose a design builder. Is that correct?
basically, you could describe it that way, yeah.
Okay, under fiscal impact, the $30,000, so that's what's anticipated to be spent in the remainder of this fiscal year, which is just from now through June 30th.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
we wanted to make sure that, and that's already been budgeted for this year. We didn't know exactly what we were gonna use the money for that we budgeted for, but your board already budgeted for this project, I think 100,000 in this year. So a portion of that will be going towards whatever Marsh Wagner gets done between now and July 1.
Okay.
And we want them to be able to hit the ground running too, so.
And then, so the 5,000 and the 100,000 that were allocated under CIP budgets for this fiscal year, that's not 105,000, it's just 100,000. So it was 95 added onto that.
Yes.
Okay, under discussion for this, the signboard or the timeline dating. Is this just timeline and request for proposals for an oversight consultant? This is not, we have not approached or been approached by any design builders at this point in time to speculate or start going through this?
You're correct. We've been approached by plenty of design builders who would love nothing more than to execute a multi-million-dollar contract with us to build this plant. But we have not approached anybody like soliciting bids or anything like that at this point. That will come after we put together the procurement documents with Marsh Wagner.
Okay, so, you know, and the design build, you know, new generation of getting projects done, hiring a designer and builder, you know, that has been presented to this board. Yeah, I think over the last year and a half is a fair statement. This now seems like another layer to that to me, instead of the old wheel of, you know, we put out requests for proposal for engineering on a water treatment plant or other project of the district. Look at that, you know, request for proposals, choose a engineer, you know, draw up a set of plans, and then send those plans out for, you know, bid the project to actually build it. It just, you know, it seems to me like we're getting a little bogged down, especially when I heard, you know, the fact that we're gonna be in design phase of this for a year and a half. And then potentially up to a year looking at, you know, through budgeting and stuff. It just seems like we're getting stretched out to where we're not gonna be putting shovels in the ground for starting construction for this thing for multiple years from now.
Yeah, that's correct. We're not gonna be shovels in the ground for at least 2 years from today, at least.
Well, actually, if I can alleviate one of your concerns, yes, this is another layer that you wouldn't see in conventional, traditional, just design, bid, build. But because, as Fred mentioned and Gadiel's, we're trying to build the budget. So there's a cost in order to have this, the certainty and the security in the process that all of our values are reflected and that we are able to build this in budget. And that, we believe, over a year and a half of research, is to do design build. And part of design build involves hiring this owner advisor. Yes, the owner advisor wouldn't be here if we were going the conventional method that you described. But then we also wouldn't have any idea until bid day how much the facility was going to cost us to build. If Fred and Heather do their job, this board will know and staff will know every step of the way what our costs are trending and how they compare against budget, so that when we get to, say, 60% or 90% design, it's pretty well known. We have a project we can build in budget, or we're over budget, we need to cut. And the cuts have a value that's already been determined by Fred and the team. So we know what we're giving up, the trade-offs. But so in terms of time, yes, this is another layer and another expense, but we think it's justified. Gadiel's right, it's going to take a while, but there's early works packages is just kind of a fancy term of saying there are aspects of the job we can peel off earlier and release to start building. And that could happen quite quickly. Like there's that raw water pond. There's not necessarily a lot of design detail to that. That's something that could be done early on. We could build a bridge over the canal early on. We could do a number of things, even as early as, 12, 18 months into the project. We could start to procure all the electrical equipment. You wouldn't do that with a conventional design bid build. You'd have to wait and the contractor would submit a bid that includes all that. But then by the time you submit your order for your electrical equipment, it may be 52 weeks, it may be 1 year out. So we actually think design build, in the long run, we're going to finish this race ahead. But it may seem like this layer of hiring an OA is another step that takes time. But we're going to run the race faster once we have the design build team all assembled and we're able to peel off certain aspects of the job. Hopefully that addresses the question.
It goes a ways towards, doing that. Let's see, back in, I have another question, but I'll look it up.
Okay, Director Ryan has a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just want to remind us all of the startling thing that occurred when we did the other way on the regional wastewater plant and got to the point where we wanted to move forward, and then we got the bid. And for some reason, it was slightly higher than what we had thought. I forget by how many millions, but at any rate, I can see the value in doing this because all these, especially that, will be taken out in the beginning, or during the process. So I see the value here completely. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'd just like to tag on too that I remember staff brought this to our attention some months ago, and you told us then that this was a different way of doing it. And so here we are, and it is a different way. And I believe that, like Eric said there, that it's different, and we will run that race faster and see how it goes.
Hey, Gadiel.
Yes.
Yes,
Director Jacobs has something.
let's let Director Jacobs go, Fred.
Yes, go ahead.
No, just to echo what President Kern said, I'm very comfortable with this method of procuring a project of this scope and complexity. Very comfortable with it.
All right. Fred, did you have something?
Yes, there's been a lot of discussion about obviously the price concern, and I wanted to mention to the board that one of the services we're going to provide this summer is we're going to provide a detailed independent cost estimate to get us trued up with the PDR from 2019. So we know exactly, we have a baseline to start with in terms of managing budget. So we're not going to wait until we select a design builder and then figure out what they think it's going to cost. We're going to start, we're going to be as proactive as we can. The other thing I wanted to mention quickly is all these issues with community concerns and all that, obviously those will all be in the design build entity contract. So we need to identify all those issues this summer so that the contract is prescriptive. And the one thing that caught my attention is lighting, things like that. If we want certain types of lighting that's not going to cast a lot of glare on the community, those are the things that need to be prescriptive in the design scope. So we'll be assisting you guys with that as well.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, well, staff has made a recommendation.
Okay, Director Rand.
All right, I had one last concern. in reading through this, I went through their past projects that they put before us as examples. The thing that concerned me was it looked like the majority of them were sewer, wastewater, or tunneling, which is fine and good. I read I read all of them, or at least scanned through them, and some were pretty big projects. So, I mean, this group is talented and knows what they're doing. I'm just wondering if when you folks were interviewing them, you dug down into how much they've actually been involved in water treatment plants, and especially one like this, it's going to be one major treatment plant at the top of the hill that's feeding a big area by gravity and so on. I mean, are you comfortable with that? Because like I said, the majority of their work appeared to me to be all wastewater and tunneling.
I see. Yeah, I apologize. I don't remember what, I read a lot of proposals and about a lot of different projects. But one thing that did stand out to me about Marsh Wagner's proposal is that they decided to bring on a water treatment expert. And the guy, Fred, Sean? What's the guy's name? You're
Rob
muted.
Schoaf. Rob
Rod
Schoaf.
Schoaf. So he's built dozens of water treatment plant all around the country. So they do have that support built into their team. Whether or not Marsh Wagner has actually done it before, they have a team member who has done it before.
Our most recent GMP project was a 1.5 million gallon groundwater reinjection high purity water treatment facility. So it's technologically a little bit more advanced than what we're going to be doing with you guys, but it's what the market offers us. It just happens everybody's doing a lot of wastewater right now, trying to get cleanup discharges. But at the end of the day, a yard of concrete or a 10-foot of handrail, it's all the same in terms of understanding cost.
And Don has met Rob Schoaf, Trevor's met Rob Schoaf. I believe you guys had a positive.
Yeah, I'll just real briefly give you sort of my take on this whole process that Adiel has provided for us. The opportunity to sit down on the selection committee was, I've been on a lot of selection committees, but this one was unique and obviously very personal to me. This is so important to me, and I understand completely how sensitive this project is. It's really, really important, but it's also very, very sensitive for all those reasons that we've talked about. With the location, it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. The neighbors love their area. We, of course, want to be great neighbors. We've demonstrated that in the past. So all of these things are very, very important to us. So through this process, all of the people that we interviewed, selection process, alluded to the sensitivity of the surrounding area, how important it was. But it was, to me, it was Marsh Wagner really but emphasized it enough that really sort of pulled me in their direction, because they're passionate about this particular project. They're not necessarily, they're passionate, but this particular project is very passionate for them. I believe they're going to hold our values as high as we want them to. So I'm comfortable with them and looking forward to it.
Director Jacobs.
Yeah, in response to Director Regan's expressed concern, I noticed in the project understanding in our PDF package, it's page 71, but in the project understanding, it's page 7. At the bottom, it talks about Rob Schoaf will work with TUD to evaluate any alternative proposals. Mr. Schoaf has worked on more than 60 water treatment plants, is a California PE, and has designed conventional processes exactly like those proposed at Sierra Pines, as well as higher technology offering. So I wonder if either Fred or Heather can tell us the exact the one that was exactly like the one that's proposed at Sierra Pines, if they could maybe tell us a little bit about that, or maybe that's something Rob would need to tell us himself.
Well, I think
Yeah, no, I'm
Rob,
kicking myself for not asking Rob to be here, but can you guys speak to that?
yeah, I think Rob would have to talk about any specifics, but I do know that Redlands, California, he did design the exact same plant that was proposed in the report for Sierra Pines.
And when he says the exact same plan, I believe he's talking specifically about the carbon activated filtration that's proposed in the preliminary design. Okay.
Yes, correct.
And was that also designed by Corolla?
I don't know if that one was designed by Corolla, but he has built plants that have been designed by Corolla as well.
Corolla did the PDR. I just don't remember off the top of my head if they did the full design. We have some slides in our PowerPoint that we could bring to the board at the next meeting, specifically about Redlands and some of the contributions that Rob made to that project. Adio, if you remember those, it wasn't just a few slides with a lot of detail.
Yeah, and I have to say I share Vice President Reagan's concern that the team has been involved in a lot of very high level, very complex, very large projects, but it just stood out to me that to have experience with a plant that's exactly like the one we have allayed some of those concerns.
Great.
Director Rand?
So I'm hoping, even though this is way premature, but that during this process up to this point, that these folks were at least told well, we are going to take on PG&E. That's all there is to it. We are going to take on PG&E, but we're working. We went through this about that grant about contingency plans. And I hope that they've been told that there's a possibility and down the road, probably many years, but there could be a couple pipelines down the South Fork Stanislaus that are going to end up probably right there at the treatment plant. And the amount of water that will be allowed to come through there will be finally the amount that we were supposed to have gotten from PG&E in the beginning. But the flume doesn't, and the ditch does not carry that amount. So in the future, there could be a lot more water availability right there at that treatment plant. So I hope, it's way premature, I know, but still, if it's not thought about, if it's not put into the overall plan, then what do we do down the road when well, look, what are we going to do now? And then we're back into that, take it apart and make something new with something that's already new. I hate doing that.
It's not premature and it's not looking too far out. We also discussed, in addition to the water delivery system becoming part of TUD's owned and operated system, the likelihood or potential of wildland fire. And what would the impacts to the watershed look like if we had a catastrophic wildfire? So that all of that gets plugged into the design build team's thought process as they go through, and we embed certain contingencies into this project so that if we do take ownership of PG&E and there's water under some pressure, maybe we don't need the pump station, so that maybe there's a T so that we can bypass pump station, save energy costs. Maybe there's an opportunity to inject some coagulant in the line, upstream and get some additional settling. There's a lot of aspects that I'm sure Rob and the technical team for the design build team will be able to address as we move through.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm hoping. I just thought I'd throw it out there in case that was one of those little details that didn't get mentioned, because it's not important now, but it will be important later. So we might as well plan for it in the beginning instead of having to spend the money twice. And There's nothing worse than taking apart something that's really working good to try and make it work the way it needs to work now. I hate doing that.
So just a little background, refresh information. The original, the first phase plant is a 3 MGD plant that can be expanded 5 MGD. So it can take the full capacity. The delivery system to the plant will be able to take the full capacity plus all of the downstream uses of the water as well.
Good.
That's including 50-year build out or 40-year build out that we use. No.
Yeah, I think we were looking at 50 years, but the reality is the plan is being designed, like Don said, for ultimate build out of 5 MGD, which would serve all of our customers in the service area, plus the addition of 17 other water systems. Whether or not this board ever chooses to absorb those and consolidate or acquire those is up to the board, but we're planning ahead, and the state really views this as a consolidation project. So they want this facility to be a regional treatment plant, and to actually they're studying regional consolidation with the idea that Sierra Pines will be there in the future. They have a lot of systems right now that are requesting technical assistance because they're having challenges meeting regulations.
Director Boatright?
Eric, you mentioned earlier that the state board had funding options for us for this Sierra Pines. What type of funding is that? Is it loan or is it grant?
Carolyn could answer this too if you want to. We can tag team.
It's a combination of grant, low interest loan and a 0 interest loan. Is the current combination. Correct.
Have we heard anything different with the new budget constraints at the state? Will that affect this?
We're concerned. Dawn and Gadiel and I had a Zoom call with the Director of Division of Financial Assistance a few weeks ago. And the purpose of that Zoom meeting that we requested was to really get some feedback from them on how certain and timing of the issuance of the funding agreement. So I don't have a clear answer to you, but they were working on this project in their contracts group to get the funds obligated before the end of the fiscal year so that they'd be protected. And then the issuance of the funding agreement would be more a formality after the commitment was made. So Dawn may have a better feeling. We walked away from the meeting or left the meeting with about as secure feeling that this was going to happen as we could. They said, well, we can give you something in writing, but even if they gave us something in writing, it's still going to have certain caveats there. Until that funding agreement is actually issued to the district, there's always a bit of a risk, but we're feeling pretty good about it. I do want to say, to elaborate on what Carolyn said, the funding package they are proposing was 25.5 million in grant, 10 million in 0 interest loan, 8.1 million in standard term loan, which the low interest loan is like 2.4% right now. So really 25 million in grant and 10 million in 0 interest. So 35 million dollars there. And then the 8.1 we would have, and Carolyn has already looked at what the debt service would look like and the impacts to our budget.
Do we have any reserve funds in the water department to go towards this project as well?
It's a complicated answer, I would say, but technically right now, no, we don't. We don't have any unrestricted reserves in the water fund because of unfunded liabilities and things like that. We do have cash at the moment, if that makes sense, but it is something that we always talk about at budget time as well, but.
Okay. The funding coming from the state would be able to increase the amount of low interest loan to cover any potential, over what our current estimates are?
We Yes, the short answer is there, that possibility is there. The state goes through a process of they issue a funding agreement. And then after it's executed, you finalize your design. You may bid the project if you're doing a conventional, or we may negotiate with a design build entity, the final GMP, guaranteed maximum price. And then the state goes through a final budget amendment, FBA process, where they true up the difference between what the funding agreement was and what the actual project cost is. We aren't advertising or banking on that. We are moving forward as if we have a hard fixed budget that does not involve any district funds and does not involve getting a budget amendment from the state. And I don't think we will tell the design build entity or advertise that loudly to them. But yes, there is a possibility to do that. We're just laser focused on getting the funding agreement. And once we have that and the state is highly invested in this project, then yes, I see that there would be some ability to adjust the budget. How much, I'm not sure.
So to piggyback on Director Boatwright's question, we could expect something similar as far as the structure of the form of payment to what we had with the wastewater treatment plant. Similar.
Actually,
Similar, it's actually better.
Yeah, yeah, because we're not using any of our funds from what I heard just now. So
Correct. And the
So
grant
it's-
portion is a higher percentage of the total project.
that was going to be my next point too. So similar, but not exactly. Yeah, okay, gotcha.
President Kearns, I just feel compelled to just add just a little bit to this, this funding agreement, like Eric mentioned at a phone call conversation, because we wouldn't have had this agenda item had we not had that phone call conversation with the division of finance and the executive people that are making these decisions. So we have a high level of confidence that's coming in short order. But in addition to that, most of us went down to Aqua last week, and two things stood out to me that I think are important to this conversation. One is they had a breakout session solely on consolidation, right? The benefits and the complications of consolidation. So the state, Governor Brown put into state law that every human has a right to safe, affordable water, right? And so lots of things now fall into place to do just that. Consolidation is a major component to do that. The state is very, very committed to consolidating water systems for efficiency reasons and making water more affordable. The state has just launched a Tuolumne County water consolidation study. This just happened several weeks ago, of which TUD is going to be. So this is coming to all of us. It's about as sure a thing as you're going to get. The second thing that, and I think I'm not sure which order this came in, but Secretary Wade Crowfoot, Secretary of Natural Resources, Wade Crowfoot was a keynote speaker there. A dynamic speaker and passionate speaker, but this thing about the governor's commitment to water in the state is high. And the question was, hey, well, with the state's finances being the way they are, what's the governor's feelings on his commitment to water? Well, surprisingly, Wade Crowfoot had a surprise guest speaker, and that surprise guest speaker was the Governor Newsom. And he came out again, very dynamic speaker, as you all know, and he reaffirmed his commitment to water resources in the state of California. And he is not wavering on his commitment to continuing to make sure that we can make water safe and affordable through every means possible. So anyway, there you go.
And one other thing too, we beat this a lot at this point, but I always want to bring it up that so the public fully understands this, that this proposed treatment plant is going to eliminate what, 6 or 7 treatment plants that we're already using. So this isn't just something that we're doing for fun. I mean, this is a huge thing for TUD, for efficiency, for long-term costs, and for the scope and the quality of treatment into the future for our drinking water. Correct, Eric? Yeah, so just wanted to get that out there. All right, anybody else? Any other questions, comments? Director Jacobs?
Thank you. A couple of things are not really closely related. They're kind of separate entities, but one is the fact that we're doing a build a budget and we have a desire to do to do what is going to be the best life cycle cost, but that may conflict with our budget cap. So can we talk a little bit about some of the trade-offs that we might anticipate on a large scale?
So, you know, that's a discussion that's really going to be robust and thorough during the design phase, once we get a design build entity on board. And it's already something that Marsh Wagner has brought up several times in their proposal. Rob Schoaf has already brought that up several times in talking with him.
Right.
You know, how about the difference between, you know, what if you get a cheaper plant now, but you're paying more in life cycle costs later?
Right.
It's a discussion that you should have with every project, no matter what the size, but it's going to be a big one for this one. So yeah, I feel really confident that Marsh Wagner has a team that can help us through that, just to, you know, kind of bring it back to this item, you know. But it's not like I'm going to stand here and tell you that we've already worked that out, because we haven't, but that will be flushed out very robustly and thoroughly during the design phase.
Do either Fred or Heather have a comment about that?
Yeah, hang on. Yeah, I think the challenge that we recognize, we're not certain that the grant and loan money that DDW is providing can go for anything other than capital costs. So I think that was the balancing act that we identified. So we may have to get a little creative if we identify some significant value items where we want to reduce life cycle costs. We may have to figure out a different way to fund those. Is that more or less accurate with your thinking, Gadiel?
I
think that's the harder part of the equation. It's figuring out what the life cycle cost is pretty easy and straightforward, but the funding is the tricky part.
I think there's also an alternative where there might be a different method for treatment that could be more effective and be potentially a longer term way of treating that is the future. So where things are going currently now, I would much rather have Rob Schoaf talk about these things, but yeah, there could be alternatives to the design that could actually make things better for longer term maintenance and operations.
I've been looking for an opportunity to speak to this maybe a little bit, not maybe just like this. I just need to, again, recognize that, you know, Trevor Cowden's in the back. Trevor Cowden is our water superintendent. He has been for a long time. He and his team have an awful lot of knowledge about water treatment and different technologies. We have 5 or 6 different types of technologies here that we deal with on a regular basis, everyday basis. So Trevor and I and others have been to other organizations with different types of technologies, right? And we're beginning to make some more of those trips in preparation to decide what is the best alternative for us, you know, long term, 50 years of service here. So I'm just recognizing the fact that, you know, you have a lot of experience here. We understand what the final outcome needs to be for us, you know, long term. With the help of Marsh Wagner and their other consultant, Rob, I know we'll figure this thing out. This one isn't as tough.
Cool. Thank you. So in terms of the balancing act that we're talking about, if we so we build a budget, if we find we need to make investments that are not capital, but investments strictly capital investments, but will yield long-term benefits. We either increase the budget which we talked about grant funding or loans, or that's one way to expand the budget. The other thing I'd like to maybe just kick around a little bit is to what extent we could use in-house construction capabilities to reduce some of the capital expenditures.
Yeah, we can definitely use in-house capabilities. As a matter of fact, there's pipelines that need to be built. A couple segments less than a mile each that have yet to be built. We've been building pipelines already anticipating this, as your board knows. But there's more that can be built. They may be wrapped up into that 46.5 million or 45.6 million, whichever one it was. We may peel that part off and have our own construction crews build it, because we're talking about 12-inch pipelines, which is somewhat big to medium to big for us in a district, but something that our crews can crank out like better than any contractor in Tuolumne County, I'd wager. So
great.
Yes, we have options especially for pipelines and for earthwork that our crews can help with.
I think we refer to that as self-performed work. There are opportunities for TUD to self-perform some of this work.
Right. So do we have I know it's very preliminary, but do we have just a rough idea of the 45+ million? What chunk of that could we do in-house?
I don't have that number.
I think the pipelines were, and I should never say things in public, but I think they were in the $2 to $3 million range.
Okay.
So it's one tool in the toolbox.
Sure.
There is to have our crew self-perform and then save that money. So yeah, there's other tools in the toolbox about early procurement for a critical piece of equipment, and also obviously the teeter-totter with
Right.
the life cycle. And so yes, you're spot on. All those things need to be considered, and that's what Fred's going to do. Is he's really going to be able to QA/QC the design build entity's cost estimate so that we can run what if scenarios all day long. So let's say we use a different treatment process. We use a package treatment process rather than a built in place, cast in place. Well, what is the life cycle versus what is the capital cost? Is it worth it? We'll have a lot of those questions posed to Trevor and his staff. And we'll, eyes wide open, make these decisions and see the budget impacts as we go.
So before we take steps to expand the budget, there are things we could do. You know, what I'm hearing is several $1 million at least, and possibly a lot more, that we could self-perform.
We could roll that into, if the board and the staff wanted, we could roll that into our capital budget.
Right. And
pull that out of the project. Another thing that hasn't been mentioned is the board authorized us to submit a grant application through Cal OES for the raw water reservoir at the site. And that was a $5 or $6 million application. Thank you. So if we were awarded that, again, that reduces, frees up some flexibility in our budget for the rest of the project.
Wonderful, wonderful. The other thing I wanted to address, and Director Balin, I think, is spot on, that we want to make sure that, and we've alluded to this of having the community voice, having a voice and outreach and engagement and buy-in. So I wonder if, I know there was alluded to in the proposal, Heather's experience in dealing with these kinds of issues, and maybe she could expand on things that she sees that the firm can do to help us with that.
Sure. I've actually managed quite a number of projects in my past, and for some much smaller communities. In fact, there was one community in central Ohio, very small town, and the community, farming town, and the community was quite involved. We were going to be basically putting 42-inch to 48-inch diameter pipelines all across their farms, in the right of way, outside of the right of way, cutting through a couple farms. So definitely was dealing with a lot of farmers and the issues with the timing of the year, when we'd be impacting them, cutting through clay tiles and things like that as well. and also with the other residents in the area. So we had multiple community meetings where we had boards up, we had little stations where people could come and talk to us about each issue that we have posted. They were also able to ask us questions about anything that they had. We give them a presentation on the project. So there was a lot of things that we did to really get buy-in from the community, and also listening to what they had to say and trying to incorporate what we could from those comments into the project. That's just one instance. You know, I've been involved in quite a number of projects through the design phase, and every job has the community impacts, depending, you know, it could be an urban impact or a rural impact or mountains or hills or, you know, national parks and things like that, or even highways. So we definitely have been through quite a bit of experience with the community and trying to get them involved and letting them know exactly what we see the project to be, as well as incorporate their issues or concerns. Lighting is definitely a big issue on a site-specific location. And that can be dealt with in a number of ways, with putting in fences and even blankets on the fences to help protect that, limiting the hours of construction. You know, some of these things are going to be dependent upon what the hours of construction are that we allow as well. And even maybe limiting them during certain times of the year when you know, sun goes down earlier or whatnot. So these are all things that we're going to have to work out throughout the design of the project to make sure that everybody's on the same understanding and that the cost reflects those things. But that's also a good time to get the community involved, and actually even in procurement is a good time to get the community involved so they understand what is about to come. And we can address some of their concerns into the procurement process and into the contract, into the RFP, so that they can be addressed by the design build teams that are proposing. And that will help us also to select the best bidder out there for the job.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Great.
The third and last thing I'd like to address is in the project delivery method considerations. You talk about, one of the things you highlight is that the TUD must select the team that demonstrates the highest level of integrity and transparency to reap the benefits and avoid the drawbacks. And then when you're talking about the procurement phase, task of 7 and 11, you talk about making sure that the people that, when you're developing ranking criteria, that you find people that have proven integrity and transparency. So I'd like to hear a little bit about how you ferret out those kinds of things that are hard to find on a piece of paper or a resume. How do you ferret out issues of integrity and transparency when you're selecting your contractors?
Is that coming to me, Gaddio?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
I think what we want to focus on is how they execute the collaborative processes. You know, you hear the word transparency all the time. It is one of the huge benefits of this, but a lot of times transparency sometimes is just burying you in details. And if you can't sort, you know, you have access to all the information, but if you can't sort it to figure out what story it's telling you, it's really not worth very much. And that's probably the most common negative experience we have with contractors, is they just bury you in numbers and PDFs. You know, we did a negotiation last August. We had a 7,700 page PDF file of supporting documentation. And if you ever try to navigate through that, and it's like, look how transparent we are, and it's not. You're just buried in a mountain of you know what. So what we want to look at is, we want to see, for example, and this is where we're going to be very prescriptive in the RFP, is we want cost estimates that where every line item in the cost estimate is coded. And what we want is an exported estimate to Excel, where we can sort using the code fields to get the information aligned in any way we want. And we have certain rules in terms of estimates where we want to see every estimate has to be an update to the previous estimate, and they have to be identical in format. You can't go in there and change all the coding around. And I'm surprised and disappointed at how many contractors play games when you're trying to compare iterative estimates, and all of a sudden you realize one's in division 40 and one's in division 20 CSI code where you can't compare them. And so during the proposal solicitation, what we want to do is ask for examples of how they provide transparency and how they identify changes in cost during design. And we want to see them demonstrate that those skill sets and best practices on prior projects. So if a contractor walks in and says, yes, I code everything and I give it to you in Excel and so that you can sort and filter all you want, that's the guy we're going to pick.
I'll add to that too, that calling references will do a lot for us and expose the weaknesses, I guess, strengths of each of these teams. And then also the one-on-one conversations that we presume we will have when interviewing the design build teams, and that feel that you'll get from each one of them. It's no different than us talking now, you know. You're going to be able to tell, I think anyway, the character of folks as you get to know them through the procurement process and the proposal stage and all of that. So I think that's going to lend a lot to this as well. And just getting to know the folks that are trying to propose on the job. I think that'll go a long way as well as the references.
Thank you. I just, in closing, I'd just like to say I'm very impressed with our staff and the effort and the quality of the effort that they put forth so far. Yeah, I think you guys have done a great job, the whole team. I just am very grateful to have to be associated with staff so dedicated and committed and passionate. So I just want to thank you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Jacobs.
Director Reagan had another comment?
Yeah, I wanted to tag on to what.
Fred, could you mute yourself, please?
Oh, yes, I apologize.
Thank you. Sorry, Director Reagan.
Am I good to go here?
Yep.
I just wanted to tag on to what one of the things that Director Jacobs brought up. We are hiring, TUD is hiring Marsh Wagner in order to help us get this project planned out and completed within budget. So if we, and that's what this is all about today. So let's not muddy the water about what our crews can do with certain portions of the project or whatever, because what you're going to do is muddy the water, going to make their job more difficult. They need to know exactly what they have to do. And I can see that they do know exactly what they have to do, and they're going to be working with staff in order to make this come to be. Using our own crews should be something. I don't want the ratepayers to think that, oh, well, we can cut some costs as we move through this process by using our crews on this portion of that. That's not going to happen. It's going to be what the contract is with the contractor, period. And then maybe our crews can pick up the ancillary things like the pipelines outside of the treatment plant or something like that. But please, let's not muddy the water with that, because that's not part of what they're being hired to do.
Your point is well taken. Thank you.
Director Baylor?
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to make a comment on complimenting the staff as well. Gadiel, I think you did your due diligence. The board, when we were reading this, we could see that you had even changed the ranking based on information. And so I think that came across clear for the board. That was very helpful for the board to make a decision so that you seemed pretty transparent in your narrative. So I appreciate that. So that's what I think you were saying as well. And after public comment, I would actually like to make a motion.
Okay. All right. So, okay. So with that, we will bring it to public comment. Anybody here would like to address the board? Seeing none, Director Balin, I'll bring it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so in the interest of this project, I recommend that the board approve staff's recommendation to hire Marsh Wagner and authorize the general manager to sign the contract.
Second,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution. I guess, or to approve the contract, I'm sorry. Any other further comment? Any further public comment? Okay. All those in favor?
Yeah,
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
President Kearns have a comment?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Director Balin has a comment.
Yeah,
real
I
quick.
just want to make sure that our vote acknowledges that we take your recommendation. I just want to, that we acknowledge the good work that you put in.
yes.
And
absolutely.
and what we vote on doesn't reflect that. So that's just why I amended this to say that we approve of your recommendation. That's what you gave us. So I think that in a way, it's my need to acknowledge the work that went into this, not just that the general manager signs this agreement, but that we approve your recommendation. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Thank you, Heather and Fred. We appreciate you guys coming on today and answering all these questions for us.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Okay.
We look forward to seeing you in person on the 25th at your next meeting.
You bet. Look forward to working with you. Thank you.
President Kearns,
Yeah.
about 5 minutes.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm in total agreement with you. We're gonna take, let's take 10 minutes. We'll come back, we'll reconvene at 11:17.
They're gonna make a presentation.
Okay, we're reconvening here. It's 11:17. Director Jacobs will be in a second. So Melissa, item number 5, please.
Okay, Tuolumne Utilities District and Jamestown Sanitary District discussion.
Okay, well, if you're not sweating now. There's something wrong. Excuse me, as you can see, this is a busy place to be, an exciting place to be, and there's important issues and matters to address on all fronts, and we can't just set something aside so we can focus on something. Otherwise, we'll never really get where we need to get in time. So I was hoping to have more than 45 minutes to go over this with you and provide some time for some conversation. I'll get through it pretty quick through my presentation. There's 12 or 13 slides, and a lot of in the beginning is more entertainment, informative but entertaining. So I might breeze through that today. But one of the things that Director Balin says to us on a regular basis is that our water system is integrated. It connects, we are connected by communities in every way. And it's really important for us to understand and recognize that. Well, similarly, we are connected through the sewer system, and our sewer system is more historic than our water system in my estimation. So I got to thank Emily, who's not here, and Abby and Eric for helping me over many, many months, really years now, on trying to gather this information for certain events like today. So I want to provide you with an overview of TUD and the Jamestown Sanitary District sewer system, and talk a little bit about our relationship, our history, and where we are today, and what challenges we have. And I must recognize that we have a member of Jamestown Sanitary District here in the background of the directors. Nice to see you. Thank you. And I also say up front that while our collective relationship with Jamestown and other sewer systems over the hundreds of years now has been rocky, maybe to say to some degree. Our relationship with Jamestown today is very much different. We are very much cooperative. We work together. We communicate. Everything's cordial. Everything's good. There's a lot of faith between us. But still, that being said, there are challenges. So yeah, I hope to have a very thorough overview of the system between here and the next few minutes, and then provide some time for, if you have any questions on any of these slides, feel free to just kind of stop me. So the history of the sewer system really began as soon as people started flocking here for gold and fame and riches and things of that nature. I mean, sanitation became an issue instantly. And that was something that the city of Sonora had, and others, but in this case, the city of Sonora had and Jamestown had to deal with. And I want to preface this: TUD was not even thought of at this moment in time. Currently, the sewer system is very complex. We're connected in a lot of ways. A lot of the communities have now regionalized, and there's a lot of pump stations, there's a lot of pipes, there's a lot of manholes, there's a lot of cleanouts, and there's a lot of maintenance. So it's a very complicated system. And the future, I don't know what, it's hard to tell what the future holds for us for sure, but we do know it's likely to be shaped by the advancements of technology, growth, how many more people are going to connect to the system, and maybe, what sort of strains that's going to be on our reclamation system and demands of the reclamation system. So back to the sort of the distant history, like I said, it really started hundreds of years ago. And I read this one article that somebody stumbled upon me. It was an editorial Democrat 116 years ago in 1892. And I'll read a little bit of it. It just says, "Our town smells to heaven. Upon approach of night, the air is strongly impregnated with gutter essence of brose and backyard musk. Every street in Sonora is a cholera breeder. Children have just recovered from scarlet fever on hand at every place. Their guardians apparently knowing nothing of hygiene." And later it says, "May the Lord help pour the old, the filthy of our town and our entire county." So obviously it was just terrible. And what was happening those days was the city of Sonora and the residents and the businesses and the hospitals were all using the creeks as a way to discharge their sewer. They simply dumped them in both Sonora and Woods Creek and let that slowly and sometimes never really getting past Jamestown. It would find its way to the town of Jamestown, and those people are fed up with dealing with the city of Sonora's sewer problems. I mean, you can just imagine the frustration. There was suits being waged against the city of Sonora. Sonora had one time, you know what, we'll stop doing it. We'll put it in the Sonora Creek, send it to the town of Stent. Complain. Well, they did complain. So, it was a mess from the very get-go. This sewer system was a mess. On the wall over there there's a funny saying that was found apparently it was documented that on one of the bathrooms at a Sonora theater, it said, flush the toilet, Jamestown needs the water. That's how ridiculous and upsetting this had to be at the time and for Jamestown. So for me, you can kind of get this, okay, there's a feud brewing here. Well, which one? Yeah, 1927 or so, Woods Creek's become so badly polluted. Signs are placed along the stream to warn passerbys. In the 30s, a form of the Sonora constructed some form of the very first sewer system that cost, $50,000. I did read into this. It wasn't much of a system. It was basically a holding tank where they collected the sewer. The solid stayed in the tank. The effluent drifted, flowed into Woods Creek, and that was the end of that. But it didn't take very long before that tank filled up with solids and failed, and they had to go back to the drawing boards. So a little more recent history, a little more talking about the 50s. The Tuolumne County Water District #1 in the 50s by now was around for better than 20 years. Primarily it's a water district agency, but they began to experience some septic system failures. And then by the 60s, they decided, hey, you know what? Being the leaders that they were in the industry, they needed to construct their own sewer treatment collection system and treatment plant, which they did. What they didn't know, I wasn't there, but reading between all the lines, I've done a lot of reading. What they didn't know was there was a lot of new regulations that were about to become mandatory for agencies like Twain Harte and Sonora and Columbia. All those areas had their own sewer treatment systems of some sort. Well, nationwide, it was very apparent that the method for treating and collecting, treating, and disposing of sewer was polluting all of our waters. It was nationwide. So Tuolumne County, Reinhardt, and all these communities weren't alone in this challenge we're having. So in the 70s, the counties did some sort of a study to address the situation that resulted in a regionalization effort. And the receiving agency at the time was Tuolumne County Water District #2, which became a district in 1947. So they were going to be the receiving agency. So systems like districts like Twain Harte, the city of Sonora, Columbia, Mono Village, those folks were having to fork over all of their investments to this new receiving agency. Right. And I say it in that way because it really was a tumultuous time in the 70s when it was Tuolumne County Water District #2, who later became TRWD, who later joined forces with the county to make TUD, right? So in the 70s, this effort became a real deal, and it wasn't as smooth and easy as any of us would hope that it would have been. Okay, so finally, after the study and everybody understands what we're going to do, in the mid 70s, several things begin to happen. The Twain Harte District #1, they began construction of what is now the Twain Harte interceptor. At the same time, the East Sonora interceptor was being constructed. The same time, or around the same time, the then new, now old Sonora Regional Treatment Plant that the city of Sonora had, which was going to be transferred, and that eventually was transferred to the county or TRWD. I think the county. I'm not real sure about that part. But eventually it became part of TRW, now TUD. In 1975 or 76 or so, the new, now old treatment plant was constructed, but we had no place to discharge the treated water. So it then still was discharged into Woods Creek and down the way. So even at that time, that modern era, we still weren't adhering to the strictest standards of that day, because that water, although it was treated, very, very well compared to days gone by, it still didn't meet the standards. So in 1978, which I think was a part of the plan the entire time, Quartz Reservoir was constructed. Quartz Reservoir's purpose is for the regional sewer system to discharge water into during outside of irrigation season. The appropriate use for this water is land application only, not necessarily discharge into Woods Creek. So that's the purpose of Quartz. It's a 1,600 acre foot reservoir, and that's its purpose. The folks that take advantage of that Quartz reservoir, of course, TUD and its customers, Twain Harte CSD now, used to be District Number 1, and Jamestown. So a little bit about Twain Harte and a little bit about Jamestown. Twain Harte today, since the 70s, has a sewer collection system. They no longer treat the water like they did before in the 60s. They send the water from their collection system to the Twain Harte treatment plant, where it's treated by TUD staff, and then through the Twain Harte interceptor, it's discharged to the regional plant for further treatment, and then and also out for disposal. Jamestown, during that whole regionalization, for some reason, Jamestown maintained everything, all of their collection system, all of their treatment system. They just never, and I don't know what they did for discharge. I'm sure they must have discharged into Woods Creek because Quartz Reservoir didn't exist until then. So today, Jamestown maintains their collection system and their treatment system, but discharges our ports, and then we take care of the outfall from there. What's important about that upper right-hand corner, 1975, set for takeover City of Sonora? That sort of language is throughout all the reading that I've done between Twain Harte, the City of Sonora, Columbia, Mona Village. This takeover, hostile sort of feeling is throughout all of this reading that I've ever done. So it was set for, and this included Twain Harte. Twain Harte, and TRW at the time were negotiating, this takeover of the treatment plant. It wasn't as seamless and smooth as you'd think. So it sat there in some sort of idle point where Twain Harte was in operation control of it. TRWD, now TUD, was going to take over at sometime. So from the 70s, it wasn't until 1986. This says 1980s, but I read it's 1986 before finally District Number 1, Twain Harte CSD, handed over all of the operations of the Twain Harte wastewater treatment plant. So, hope I'm not going too fast. All right, a little more history here on the regional system. From the mid-90s, due to the county's strict septage policies, again, not only are there 6,000 or so TUD customers, a few hundred Jamestown customers, 1,500 customers of Twain Harte, thousands of septic systems in our system, in the system. And they were failing just as everybody else's were. And so the county enacted a strict septic handling situation, inspections. And so, and that by now, Director Boatwright is an operator here at this plant. And we all saw over time, over decades, 30 years, the amount of septic coming to the plant really tripled. So the system was set up and built for a certain flow amount of septage and type of septage. And then over the decades, with the increased amount of home septic systems that were being pumped on a regular basis, the amount of pit toilets that are coming to the treatment plant, the amount of portable toilets that are coming to the treatment plant, and then fire camps later coming to the treatment plant, that system became, pretty well dilapidated. The other thing that influx of high concentrated septic system became, we believe, and I think Director Boatwright will agree, contributed to some of the the water quality issues we're beginning to have at the now old wastewater treatment plant. So just trying to articulate some of the challenges that led to the point where we had to start investing by the year 2000. The district had to start investing, hundreds of thousands of dollars into the existing treatment plant to get it to perform and to meet the strict discharge requirements. So we did those things, but still we were struggling, and eventually we did. But I felt important to point out that between 2000 and 2013 and 2021, we had a consent decree. We had to through this lawsuit by the California Sport Fishing Protection Alliance. As part of that agreement, for the next 8 years, we were supposed to spend $350,000 on our collection system, right? Because our collection system also is in poor shape. As you saw, some of that stuff's nearly 100 years old, right? And still in use downtown Sonora. Well, TUD spent well more than $350,000 a year. In fact, I would think in that time we spent well over several million, well, maybe up to a couple of $1 million each year in that time frame. So again, that was a situation that this district inherited and had to rectify in some manner. 2014, again, I feel important to talk about this, the Quartz Reservoir. In 2014, well, prior to 2014, from the time Quartz became in existence till 2014, many times, I don't have the exact number, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 times, we put too much water into Quartz. And so we had to release water out of Quartz and into Woods Creek, right? And that forces to get a permit, special NPDES permit. Don't ask me what it stands for again. I studied it this morning, forgot about it, but it was an expensive permit to maintain and hold and operate, as Director Boatwright knows full hand, because that was one of his primary jobs, is to manage that NPDES permit. So TUD embarked on a project. It cost about $1 million in 2014 to add an additional 150 acre feet of storage. And this was going to eliminate the need for the permit, and it would guarantee we'd never discharge out of Quartz Reservoir into Woods Creek. Well, while that is true, it is not because we didn't have to go through some Herculean efforts to not do that. Director Boatwright knows firsthand what we did, I forget what year, 17 or 18, and how much money we invested into the reclamation system just to get rid of as much water as we could. So we've been very close, at least 3 times since 2000, since the completion of this project, to put too much water in the course, including this year. Next slide. Okay. Recent agreements and activities with Jamestown. So in 2014, TUD became involved with the coordination and planning of Jamestown's new treatment plant. They had, for many years, 15 or 20 years, they had planned and studied to construct a new treatment plant at the Quartz location. So but in 2014, they were getting fairly serious about their activities, and TUD was a part of some manner. In 2015, now I'm in the play here as operations director, but just barely. I couldn't spell sewer, let alone know what. So, but we began to talk about upgrading our regional plant as well. 2017, JST conducts an alternatives analysis for their new treatment plant. So, but I want to pause here for just a minute, and because I think this is important in context of what we're really talking about. So that alternatives analysis also contemplated consolidating with TUD. Yeah, right. That would be an alternative to building a new treatment plant. In my opinion, in reading, I wasn't really a part of that, but in my opinion, in reading and listening and talking with people, that was just an exercise check in a box. To me, Jamestown 2017 had no intention or desire to consolidate with you. They wanted to maintain their independence, which is great and fine. We had enough to do at the time, had our hands full. So, but I don't think that was a bona fide alternative that was really exhaustively exercised, but that's the end of that. Eventually, Jamestown receives a grant and low interest loan to build their treatment plant. And by all accounts, through that agreement, they were not able to or allowed to expand their capacity. And they already knew, Jamestown that is, already knew that their capacity was shrinking. They had used up a fair amount of their existing capacity. There wasn't a lot of room for extra connections. There aren't today. And so, but according to Jamestown, this new funding agreement did not allow for increased capacity, which I think is, I know that's important. Later on, 2019, TUD and JSD executed an agreement where we transferred ownership of what is called a force main. The old plant was on the other side of the highway at Woods Creek. And when they were done treating the water, TUD had a force main that pumped their effluent to Quartz. Well, their new treatment plant is going to be at Quartz. So they repurposed our old force main as their way to transport water from the old treatment site where they did primary treatment to the new plant. So we exercised an agreement where they took over that portion of the force main. Yep.
Yeah, I just want to step in here, given all the issues we've had or discussions we've had at LAFCO. Just let everybody know as of Monday's meeting, or prior to Monday's meeting, I served last on the last LAFCO commission last month. So this month we have Groveland assuming the rotating seat. So, but I did attend the most of the meeting yesterday. So we're talking about MSRs and consolidation and discussion and things like that. So TUD had their last municipal service review, or MSR, in 2013. And it's been brought to a lot of people's attention that if LAFCO had been doing their due diligence, this 2017 situation when there was an analysis on what to do, what the alternatives were, had LAFCO been engaged in doing the due diligence with both Jamestown and with TUD, the outcome may have been different. We would have a lot different discussion today. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Okay, so later on in 2000, TUD and JSD, so in about this 2019, 2020, TUD had committed to changing its treatment method to include filtration or tertiary treated water. Whereas Jamestown treatment plant was designed and constructed to do partial tertiary treatment, not full tertiary treatment. But as it turns out today, their tertiary treatment part of that plant is functioning. So we had committed that we're going to go to tertiary. And so we let Jamestown know that per our agreement, our new agreement, their effluent standards has to meet our standards, which is tertiary. So that's going to pose a problem for them, but we'll give them plenty enough advance notice because we hadn't really started construction yet. At least I don't think. So we began to meet regularly with Jamestown staff to staff, to discuss how and why Jamestown needed to produce tertiary treatment effluent water. So those discussions were always cordial, always pleasant. But just as a general, when I sat in those meetings, I think I sat in most of them, maybe not all of them, but when I sat in most of them, I was just an observer, just kind of listening in and paying attention. But eventually, I got the sense that Jamestown wasn't really on board with us going to tertiary in the first place. They actually questioned why we decided to go to tertiary, which I didn't think was in there. Although it was cordial, I took exception to them questioning why we wanted to go to tertiary. Of course, they have no idea all of the things that we were going through for the past several years before. Quartz Reservoir, the lawsuit, all these things. So anyway, I got the sense, now I'm the general manager, I got the sense that they weren't getting on board fast. There was a lot of talk about, we might try to apply for a grant here, we might do this. Well, we were rock and roll and spent a lot of our district money to get to tertiary treated. And so eventually with the health shop legal counsel, we drafted a letter and we just sent them, kind of, this is what's happening, Jamestown. So, let's do what we got to do. In and around that same time, our, PACE, we talked about PACE earlier, Pacific Advanced Civil Engineering, right? They're working for TUD in the design and construction of our treatment. But this becomes known to them through us as well, as Jamestown's got a challenge here. So through our funds, our monies, we had PACE draft a technical memorandum to Jamestown on some of the ways that they can some options for them to get on board with tertiary treatment. So we did that, but eventually we had PACE stop that kind of work on their behalf out of our rates. Jamestown needed to take over here, and they know that and what's required of them. And then finally, as far as this goes, Jamestown imposes a moratorium on issuance of a new sewer connection. So here are, the crux of it. Here are the things that cause us some challenges, right? And when I say us, I mean TUD. Jamestown is currently unable to meet tertiary requirements, which will impact TUD's ability to meet downstream water quality standards and new waste charge requirements. They're not obstacles they can't overcome, but they can be overcome at some cost, right? So that's why I say it will just impact us in some way. Remember, I talked about courts and all the challenges we have. Sound like TUD had in the past, and like Twinehart has to some degree in the past with their collection system. They have a very significant issue with inflow and infiltration. And that has a direct impact to our operation. Their system, quality of their system, have a direct impact to our operations. Significant. Like I said, we spent $1 million in courts and give 150,000. So we spent a lot of money, and I talked about the millions of dollars we spent in our collection system, right? So it's significant to me. And then, finally, maybe least important to TUD, but their lack of capacity and moratorium, people are going to want to construct homes and just going to look to TUD as to be the savior. And one of our directors years ago, managers, Tom Haglund, said, yeah, we can't be all things to all people at all times. Don, we just got to know where we can be and where we need to be. So, sorry.
I just want to interrupt real quick because I'm reading that lack of capacity moratorium. Why would it necessarily put the burden on TUD to assume additional sewer connections? Why couldn't JSD go back to the project proponents and ask them to pay for capacity enhancements in Jamestown?
I think that's a great idea.
Jamestown Sanitary District took on a USDA loan that would allow them to build a treatment plant that was exactly the same capacity of the one that they have, which was nearing capacity, but unable to meet treatment standards. So they needed a new treatment plant. The type of treatment plant that they built was a cast in place concrete box infrastructure with different operational components that treated the wastewater. But there's no way to expand it by just adding a new component here or a new component here. It's build another wastewater treatment plant system right next to the existing one. So there's a lack of, as a foresight, the choice of their treatment. I presume that they went through all the studies and, their board was presented with information that led them to make the decisions that they did. And they just can't take on anymore because they're at capacity of what that treatment plant will do. So like Yosemite Vista, which this board has talked about many times, ended up pumping uphill to the Sonora Regional wastewater treatment plant. how many other areas of Jamestown can actually afford to be taken on as pumping wastewater back uphill for treatment? Yeah, that's kind of the situation that we're in, but the bucket's just not big enough. It's already full down there in Jamestown.
Sure.
One more thing that I don't want to derail you, okay? So in other words, they have declared that they are at build out. More or
I'm
less.
presuming by just knowing that their board put a moratorium on new connections. And I forget what the count of connections were at Yosemite Vista, but they turned that project down and, you know, then got turned over to pumping uphill.
You mean Valley Vista?
Our Valley Vista, okay, thank you. You're right, Yosemite Vista is a little bit further down the highway than Jamestown. All right, gotcha, yeah.
So what do we think? So then in other places when this occurs, they look to other areas of the community for where it does work. They don't continue to put pressure on this area that's already said that they're a build out. I mean, other general plans that I've looked at, they designate, okay, you're a build out over here, but then we're gonna move over here. And it just seems like there's some kind of disconnect here. I'm not quite sure what it is.
Right.
That they continue to put pressure, now it's on us to provide down there. Thank you.
Dr. Rand?
Correct. But the problem is the insanity of pumping it from Valley Vista a mile or whatever it is, all the way up to Mill Villa, which has to go under Highway 108 and then get pumped again up to our regional wastewater plant. So that means even if the developer installs the system to our standards, our ratepayers, once we take it over, have to pay the electricity to pump twice into perpetuity, as well as TUD has to take care of the pump stations and all of that pipeline into perpetuity. We don't want it. We do not want it. The only way this is going to work is if TUD builds another treatment plant where it's gravity flow to it. We don't want to do that either. This is Jamestown Sanitary's district's problem, and they made it by making a wrong decision. I don't know why TUD needs to be the benefactor of that bad decision.
The rescue.
Right.
Yeah, Director
Go
Balin,
ahead, Don.
I recognize that you posed a question, but not, right? Why don't this and why don't that? And, you know, we're not the planning agent. I know you know that, so I'm just, I understand your question and I'm just not in that control. But one of the things you said, I wanted to make sure I heard it right. I'm sure I did, but ordinarily, right, if there's a need for significant upgrade to a system, a plant or something, it's on the developer usually to provide. It's not usually on the district and its current ratepayers to fund some projects going to help development. I think that's your point, right? I think, you know, I don't speak for Jamestown. I don't help them manage their system, but that's something they need to, you know, kind of that exercise they need to go through. And I was contemplating, you know, talking about the Valley Vista, that is an example of how the lack of planning and forethought that must go into these situations, and how it now the Director Ring, and I hate to say it, but that the Valley Vista is squarely in our hands now. This board made decisions years ago to take on that capacity where, like you said, quite naturally would flow to Jamestown much easier. So
that was brought before this board. That was a smoke and mirrors thing to where we got talked into it. And we were basically told, oh, well, TUD just has to do this. No, we didn't just have to do this. But that's there was members on the board at that time, as well as a general manager that blew that past us with a bunch of really what I would call basically lies. And it just doesn't make sense. That this should have been taken care of in 2017, period.
Agreed. I just can't, I can't focus a lot of time on trying to go back to 2017 and do. What I gotta focus on, Director Ringen, is making sure this just protected. That's why I'm here, and I know it's challenging. We've been here 3 hours, but just like the last item, the Sierra Pines, this is a pressure cooker of a place to manage, and you guys are feeling it. We're feeling it. My staff feels it. We're up to the challenge, though. But we gotta work cooperatively. We just have to work cooperatively with James.
Before you continue, can I get a consensus that we can go past 3 hours here to get through this? We all in agreement for that?
I'm minutes
just
away.
A short time passed.
Okay, do you have a hard stop?
15 after?
Maybe do 12:15.
Okay.
12:15?
Okay, I mean, next 2 slides, get to the, not to skip. All right, now LAF was involved, right? I had intended, when Jamestown threw up the moratorium and did a few other things in there, got my feathers ruffled, like, I had already planned to bring this item to this board for, just for information. At this point, all this discussion, all this work has happened at the staff level, not at the board level. So I just felt like I needed to get this to you. I wanted to get to you before May, but we've had all kinds of things happen. So here is late May or in the middle of May, and you're getting this information. But now LAFCO's involved. The moratorium goes up. LAFCO says, hey, that's not cool. We're going to do an MSR in both Jamestown and TUD. And I don't want to go into the history. That was relatively new. So you know where we're at with that. And last night, the LAFCO commission met again, and I must say that is not a high performing commission. Our LAFCO, Tuolumne County LAFCO commission is not high performing. It is in our best interest, though, of everybody that it is a high performing entity, right? So we're going to work with Pete Camp and the Tuolumne County chapter of special district. We're going to do our part to help LAFCO along to get where they need to get to. But nevertheless, they're going to follow through with these MSRs. Maybe with a dumbed down version of the discussion about consolidation. But knowing all of that, again, I want to be able to bring you all the information you need to make informed decisions well ahead of time. So, so that's LAFCO. Next slide. So what about consolidation? It isn't as we obviously, TUD has been around a lot of water consolidations, right? We understand how they work when they work well and when they don't work very well, right? And so with the knowledge that we have, if there's ever going to be a consolidation with Jamestown, I want to be able to provide you with all the information of all the impacts that it would impose on your district and your existing ratepayers. So I would like to do that long before LAFCO down with any decision. But LAFCO, according to Jesse, our legal counsel, LAFCO really does have the power to enforce, that's the right word, consolidation. They could force consolidation. It's just within the powers. Jesse also says that we have the ability, both Jamestown and TUD, to throw a number of monkey wrenches in there, right? So I don't know what those monkey wrenches are, but for me, I want you to be well informed of what those impacts would be. I'm not really asking because unless you just tell me no, I'm going to ask staff to go back to our rooms in the next few months, compile a bunch of information, what we like the impacts to a consolidation with Jamestown would be. That's the end of my report.
Okay, so I have a question. So, so on advice from council, LAFCO does in fact have the power to force a consolidation between TUD and JSD. I wonder what that means in reality. Do they dictate the terms? Do they dictate the time frame? Do they dictate all the moving parts? Or is it just, yeah, you guys consolidate and
Figure it out.
Let us know when it's done? Any idea?
I have no idea.
Okay, Barbara, go ahead.
And I'm sorry, but let me go first, now you go. So they have the power to make a recommendation.
That's true.
Okay, I don't know, we'd have to check with Jesse if they have the power to enforce it if we politely declined and said, no, thank you for this report, but we do not think it's in our best interest.
Well, I just heard Don say that it sounds like they do have that power. Is
They
that?
have
Maybe-
force, that would be like a weird hostile takeover over Jamestown.
Yeah, again, we gave, a couple of meetings ago, we talked about LAFCO's power and authority, right? We talked this, and I believe Jesse was online there. So that's what we talked about. What's LAFCO's authority? And that's where I understand. LAFCO has this authority. I think you're right. They have authority to recommend.
Yeah.
But who are they gonna recommend it to? Tuolumne County, who has a high vested interest in all of this place. So I would assume they would take their recommendation to the county.
Go ahead.
A couple of questions. Sorry for the humorous response, but if we look back in the history of the hostile actions and takeovers, the question just kind of fell into the same category of what's been done in the past and, you know, whichever way it comes out. But the most basic question, and I am really apprehensive about staff spending staff time, money, resources, or research into it based on the fact that even if LAFCO does force a merger between TUD and Jamestown Sanitary District, what does it change? It changes from 2 boards to 1. And it changes the billing apparatus to whatever new sanitary district it is. That's the only thing it changes, because that area of the county, until a new addition to the wastewater treatment plant is built, is still under a moratorium. So unless the county has some way to fund that expansion, it changes nothing. Except, like I said, 2 boards to 1, and who's, being the billing company.
Director Reagan.
And I want to tag on to Director Boatwright's comments there. It's a known fact that their infrastructure, the pipes underground, are not good. So does that mean TUD's ratepayers now get to step up to the plate and bring that up? I mean, we already have enough of our own issues, and we've been working with them, trying to get ahead of it. We still got downtown Sonora to handle and a couple other places. So you're telling me TUD ratepayers now have to take care of Jamestown's infrastructure underground? I think not. That's couldn't be legal.
Well, it depends on new agency financing and all that. Currently, TUD is set up as a sanitary sewer customer. And, say in Melvilla is the same as in Sonora, is the same as in Willow Springs, regardless of infrastructure and pumping.
But this is new.
Same.
This is new. This is in addition. What's in place right now is in place, and that's what we've been dealing with. This is a whole new mess being brought in that the TUD ratepayer is supposed to now take on.
That's potentially something that the board could consider going back. It would take changing the finances department and changing the billing structure, if that's what it took to actually be fair.
Director Bale.
I just wanted to call the attention to authority drift, we'll just call it. I don't know what else to call it, but when I look at this agreement between Jamestown Sanitary and TUD, and it is that one number C06 8000-210, I don't see a board signature. I see Ed's signature and Jesse's signature, but so then I wonder, did that come before the board? I'm just wondering. Now, the counter agreement in Jamestown has Judy's signature on it. So obviously their board reviewed it. But this is what I mean by going back to the record, going, did that come before us? And if it did, how come whoever was president at that time didn't sign that? Why was it just Ed and Jesse? So, and then their one had Judy, board chair, right up front. And then Patricia's signature, et cetera. So so when I look at a clear chain of custody of authority, I don't see it here. So these, in my opinion, if it is, maybe it did become in front of us, and whoever was board president didn't have to sign. It was just Ed and Jesse, but it's just not a clear, it just feels like an end run because and that's where I don't want to get into Box Canyon, this board get into Box Canyon, because like you said, with Valley Vista, we did not know the questions to ask. We did not know to say, hey, give it back to, we're saying no. You know, it's just sort of the way it came up. So not to dwell on that, but anyway, these are just little nuances that I find quite curious that I have no idea if we really approve this one agreement. I see Ed's signature, but again, this is where, and wanting to go back and have a level of confidence in our decision-making that then leads us here. I'm just not seeing it. So that's why I get very concerned, because otherwise, why even have a board? And you know, I've talked about this before. I get concerned. If LAFCO can trump us, and all the hidden costs that now we're finding out with Valley Vista, that the ratepayers taking over. Hey, sounds like a good idea. Let's help them out. Okay, you know, dump. And I just get concerned we don't have all the information when we make a decision, especially if somebody else is giving us a recommendation. Because based on where other people want us to go. I just don't like being used like that.
Well, this staff isn't using this board in any shape, manner, or form. We are, hence why I'm here today, providing you with a lot of information and asking to go back. You can tell me no. You can tell me just stop working on it and hope for the best. I'm not a guy that likes to hope for the best. I like to know what the heck I'm doing. I assure you, Director Balin and the rest of the directors, that that agreement did come before this board for approval. You authorized the general manager to sign that agreement. So it did. Go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, it came before the board on May 14th, 2019.
Okay, thank you.
So
What was,
Thanks.
does it show a vote count? Was it 5-0? Okay, just curious, just out of curiosity.
President at that time, I think.
Yeah, we do have
You
it
were
and it's in the minutes, Melissa, if you want it. Yeah. Yep.
1 second. Jump around here.
So this goes, could we pull out of LAFCO?
wouldn't change anything, but yes,
It wouldn't change anything?
wouldn't change anything.
Okay.
So again, back to LAFCO real quick, you know, LAFCO is a special commission that was formed, the state put together to be an agency that sits between the government and the people to make sure that the people's needs are served. So if LAFCO so that's that. The way I see it, LAFCO is going to determine if both TUD and Jamestown has the technical, managerial, and fiscal ability to serve their customers, right? That's LAFCO's mission. And if they find that one of us cannot, we're going to do something about that because we need to be able to provide services to our customers, right? That's the bottom line. That's the way I see it.
Okay.
And, you know, we have a regional system. We're connected, like you tell us, we are connected at the hip. We are only as good as our weakest link. Our agencies that we're partners with, Twain Hart, in this case, Twain Hart CSD, they need to be viable and strong and competent and fiscally, managerially, technically sound in order for us to be strong and
I appreciate that. And I appreciate looking at that for the chain of authority that it just got omitted here, but that, you know, it's good to bring it up the record. So, but so my question to Jamestown Sanitary is, have they already met to decide whether if they already had this discussion, and decide whether they want to move forward with?
I think that's a great question. Of course, I don't know. I did attend one of their board meetings, the board meeting before last, where they were contemplating issuing their the same letter that we sent, the resolution to tell LAFCO to change their scope of work to a simple MSR versus MRS. The thing is, too many acronyms today. But anyway, I did I left this out, but it's really important. I really also would like to suggest that we have a joint board meeting with
Mhm.
Jamestown, board to board, so that you can have the time to ask all of your questions of them.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I agree. That is a great idea. Just want to say something that Director Ringen brought up about the financial aspects of this and whatnot, of what would take place and, you know, who knows how that would all wash out in the end. But Dawn also brought up the fact that we know about taking over water systems pretty darn well. And first thing that came to my mind was, you know, that when we do take over water systems, those ratepayers pay the bill to get it up to our standards. So I don't know why it would be any different than that, but maybe it would be. That would be up for a discussion down the road, but
Well, I'll tell you what, it would break the people's backs in Jamestown.
well,
To have I mean, as it is, just trying to have rates be without talking about upgrading the infrastructure to
mhm.
where it should be. They're already gonna see a huge increase.
And I agree with you. But again, that's why we would have to have that discussion.
Right.
Yeah.
President Kern.
Director Bell?
Yeah, it gets back to what Director Boatwright said is, you know, they made a decision. And Jamestown did. And so now I really want to hear from them because now it seems like everybody's wanting to override their decision. And really put them in receivership. I don't know how else to say it. I just wanted to hear what your thoughts, like you had said, could you elaborate a little more on what is any of this going to buy them or by us, except
Well, yeah,
one
I mean,
board?
The board, there will be nothing changed with the moratorium in the Jamestown area until some other type of infrastructure.
Mhm.
And it could be different than a treatment plant. Maybe it's park a massive pump station down there in Jamestown and pump back up to Sonora Regional's capacity to treat wastewater as well as what goes down there to the existing treatment plant. But there, again, you're talking a pump station, you're talking pumping costs and all of that, or build another. This is kind of really irritating. Little bit of hindsight on Valley Vista. From the superintendent at the time for the wastewater department down through collections, we were all saying no to Valley Vista. Based on the fact we didn't want to have to maintain and operate. Taking over a water system, pretty unique. Really unique, taking over sanitary sewer systems, i.e. Gibbs and some other outlying facilities that TUD is encompassed. Same issues, same problems. But like I said, the moratorium down there won't change until there's a new piece of infrastructure. It doesn't matter what LAFCO does. It doesn't, behoove us to, try and make sense of rates for wastewater system until such time as, I'm pretty sure the Jamestown Sanitary Board is still saying no. If they've sent a cease and desist letter to LAFCO as well. We can even get together, joint, I would like to hear their opinion. They could talk for themselves instead of us trying to guess. But like I said, it doesn't change anything until there's a new piece of infrastructure down there that is very sizable and very costly.
Yeah, that's a good point, Director Boatwright. Just because LAFCO or the county or the state of California waves their magic wand and says merge, doesn't eliminate the problem. Still gonna be business as usual until something physically changes. Yeah, which I believe is what you're saying. Yeah. Director Jacobs?
So I would be very supportive of that joint meeting with our board and Jamestown board. I would also strongly recommend at that meeting that we have someone to speak to the legal issues, whether it be the legal counsel from LAFCO, that's probably the best choice, or at least our legal counsel to make it clear what the steps are to consolidation. In a nutshell, I can tell you what my fragmented or my unofficial, non-legal understanding is the MSRs, the municipal service reviews, do studies. They look at a whole host of things, including consolidation. And they arrive at findings. And then based on those findings, the LAFCO Commission makes their decisions or recommendations. If the finding is to consolidate, then there's a process, there's a very long process, very lengthy process, involved process before consolidation can take place. It's not a matter of LAFCO decreeing from on high, thou shalt consolidate. It has to be, my understanding is there has to be agreement on for both boards of either agency that consolidates. There is a voting process, and it's kind of complicated. It's based on percentage of land ownership, value, and percentage of registered voters or combination thereof. It's kind of involved, but it's not a very straightforward process. So I think to get clarity, we should have LAFCO legal counsel present at that meeting, and it's just explain to us, okay, what's involved in a consolidation.
We can sure ask her.
Okay. Good.
Oh, no, but.
No, that was a
We're
good
sure
present-
time.
That was a good presentation, Don, and bring us up to speed on the history and what's happened here going way back. And yeah, I look forward to meeting with JSD's board if they're willing to do it.
Melissa's
sure
already
they
been in
probably are.
contact, so they were waiting for this meeting to firm it up. So Melissa will be reaching out to Jamestown's and set it up.
Okay. All right, great. Well, this was a discussion item, so no need to take any action. And thank you. All right, I would like to move on to Director's Communications because I know next meeting is going to be a long agenda too. So I'd like to get our Aqua presentation, our Aqua reports that out of the way if we can real quickly. So who wants to go first? Go ahead, Glenn.
Okay. So myself and a number of other board members and staff, general manager and staff attended an Aqua conference in Sacramento last week. There, you know, in the interest of time, there's not enough time to even give an overview, but I'll just state that that's what occurred. There was a meeting of the Waste Watershed Committee that I attended with Direct Vice President Ringen. And yesterday's LAFCO meeting I attended as a interested party, not as a commissioner. That's it in a quick nutshell.
Great, thank you. Barbara?
Okay, I'll keep mine short too. Thank you. I attended many of the sessions, but there was one entitled, which I thought was really interesting. Are California's water managers ready for the future? And I think this board has a mixed response. I think if you, even now that we go to an app to look at where the programs are, where their room is, what the speakers are, and actually write your notes on it, I would say at least one board member is not ready for the future. So, but this is the way of the future. And I thought all the sessions were good. I thought Wade Crowfoot has a lot of cachet as the natural resources head person, and he is sort of a you know, where they're going is where California's going, like it or not. All right, and it has changed Aqua dramatically, and I won't go into that. I won't start, as I like to say, from the Big Bang Theory, because I know we're all hungry, but when Governor Newsom came out and said, we have 180 billion in California infrastructure needs that he supports, he said, we've all enjoyed the pollution-based prosperity, but those days are over. I thought that was pretty powerful statement. Even though we all want to go back, we're not going to go back. They all really made it a point to say how grateful they were for the water agencies. I thought Governor Newsom's gratitude was sincere, and I thought Wade Crowfoot's gratitude was sincere at the heroic effort we do to bring people clean water every day. And they really did acknowledge that. And throughout the conference, I've noticed that Aqua has actually embraced a lot of the changes. The Women in Water, the fellowship, or the scholarship folks, the foundation, all those represent a whole different way that we're going. And I also noticed for the first time that I'm a senior member of that the demographic has changed. So I wanted to comment on that because, like it or not, when I drag everybody to nature-based solution, you know, that Joel Metzger was the moderator for, it's because we may not like that direction, some of us, but it is the direction that it's going. And by sliding backwards and not recognizing that, we are actually taking the capital out of the future generation to maintain our lifestyle. And so with that, I'll just say, I thought it was a fantastic conference, and I really appreciated that we were all there together. And sorry, Director Boatwright, you weren't able to make it.
Okay, don't get me started on Aqua. I've gone to a ton of them. It's the worst one I've ever been to, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. Highly expensive. Beam me up, Scotty. I don't belong around here anymore.
Not yet. Not yet.
425, attended, participated in the TUD Ditch Committee meeting, which you heard all about today, as agenda item number 5. 430, attended, participated in the TUD Community Watershed Committee meeting, and that's all about relinquishing our FERC license for the Columbia Pump Station. You're going to hear more about that. It's coming before the board shortly for consideration and decision. 5-7, met with Senator Alvarado Gil's staff, and I brought before them who was Dana Jorgensen. He was the representative that was there that day, who I know real well for years. I brought up issues about ADUs, ADLs, granny flats, and the good points and the bad points about it. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Director Boatwright, any
Board
report?
report this time.
Okay. All right. Well, I too attended the Aqua meeting, also the Aqua JPIA meeting, and just make it brief on that. The silver lining from the JPIA is that although our rates are continuing to go up, they are starting to flatten a little bit, especially the cybersecurity portion. As a couple of years ago, it went up like 600% in 1 year. Now it is definitely starting to, that curve is not flat, but it is flattening. So it's getting a little bit better. One thing they asked about was to send in pics of pictures of some of the stuff we're doing to limit our liability issues and whatnot, like some of our forest thinning projects and whatnot that impact some of our infrastructure. Because what they're up against with their reinsurance underwriters, most of them are back east and some of them are offshore as well, in Europe and whatnot. And all they know about California is what they see on the news, which is catastrophic forest fires, earthquakes, and all the other horrible things that happens here that causes insurance claims. So they're asking for help to put in their portfolio so that they can try to get our rates down for the good things that are happening here. So just something to throw out there to you.
Picture
And
of
we have sent
leggings.
many photos to them on
Right
that.
on. Good
Yeah,
for you,
many
Abby.
of our thinning projects, but we have more thinning projects, so we'll continue to keep sending them over.
Perfect.
I'm
Yeah.
glad they brought that up.
They need to take a picture of leggings,
Of what?
leggings,
Leggings.
yeah. Keep from getting snake bites.
Oh, okay. Right on.
Gators.
Gators, yeah. The only other thing, I'm not going to duplicate what everybody else has said, but two things that I took from additionally that I took from the meeting was there's two bills up that became 2-year bills because they were held over from last year. I don't remember if they're ABs or SBs, but 460 has to do with water rights. And that one looks to be stalling out. The author of that bill has made no attempt to further its progress. So that's a good thing. The other bill, which is also on water rights, 1337, that one's still a danger and Aqua has opposed it. The author there is attempting to quell opposition, but yet doing nothing to compromise. So that's not a good thing, in my humble opinion. Both of those bills are opposed by Aqua. The one other thing that I just wanted to bring up real quick is PFAS. We've been hearing a lot about PFAS, PFAS, which is the new contaminant that the state has found that could possibly be in our surface water. They're talking about maximum contaminant levels. I don't know if staff has heard this or not. You probably have, but it looks like the two parameters are going to be 4 and 10 parts per trillion. Per trillion. Those of you at home, think about that. Parts per trillion. You know, I've been in this business, water business, for 40 years. Started out parts per million when I first got in. Then it went to parts per billion. Now we're talking about parts per trillion. Means we're going to have to get new equipment to measure, to treat. We're going to have to train our people to do this down to this level. That kind of stuff is not going to make our rates any cheaper. That's for sure. So think about that. And if you have any problems with it, talk to your people in Sacramento about that, because parts per trillion, really, that's less than microscopic, in my opinion. Anyway, that's all I have. It's 12:23, meeting adjourned.